We've got Brazil versus Russian Federation coming up right now, and the players are just getting ready, but as always, you see our names under there, no introductions required. But these two teams, kind of different sides of a coin, really, in my opinion. Russia, we know, has been extremely powerful. Last year, it has some of the best players in the world, whereas Brazil feels like we're still exploring what they have to offer. I feel like they have a couple of star players, but that's about it. So I'm always interested in these regions to see how deep the pool goes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, you know, Race is a name that we've just started to get used to. I think if you've been listening to Lorinda or perhaps even Darroch, you've heard a thing or two about Race for a very, very long time. They really turned me on to Race's play, and I, you know, checked out a lot of his footage from Copper, and then, you know, picked him as a qualifier for championships, which he eventually then did qualify for. And unfortunately, he turned up to championships with just the nuts low roll in terms of lineup that he had, and then the group that he ran into, and just was very, very unsuccessful. I think it's just 0-2ing out of his group at that point. But Race and Perna, as you see there, are the two potential biggest names, I guess, in terms of success within the South American region. I think that's the big point for Brazil, because of, you know, how expensive and how restrictive it is for them to travel around the world from South America. You don't really see them popping up at too many major tournaments, so you only really get exposure to them in tournaments that are held in these beautiful nations that you see here, Brazil.
Why would you want to leave
the surrounding area? Exactly. If you're going to live there, why exactly would you want to travel anywhere else? But yeah, you don't get that level of global exposure. Whereas, you know, Russia, a little bit closer to, you know, the kind of the Central and Western European scene. You know, it's much easier for them to travel to DreamHacks, for example, that take place, you know, much, you know, a couple of hours flight away for them.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, Russia also has a very strong Hearthstone scene with an absurd volume of fans and players that are also extremely good. I feel like it could even be, you know, say the Americas, Europe, and then like just Russian Federation as a complete separate region, that just because they play on European servers, they could still hold their own as a region in themselves. But let's check out what they're going to use to hold their own with in this match. So we can see what decks they ended up with the pick and ban. So we see Druid gone from Brazil and Rogue being a ban with Russian Federation. So that's it's a surprise for me, to be honest. So, like, why is Rogue gone?
It's not for me. It makes perfect sense, but there's a missing piece of information in that Russia have brought Quest Rogue with them. And now this is something that, as series by series this tournament progresses, it's starting to make sense to me, because actually the format ends up being incredibly greedy for two reasons. Firstly, the thing you've heard me say a lot, just by extension, the nature of the decks that you end up with when you ban away some of the best decks in the game are just some of the slower decks anyway. But then also, you're allowed to build your decks as greedy as you want, because with 3 bans at your disposal, you can take away basically all of the aggro in the game, and just leave yourself in that incredibly powerful position. So that leads to a very greedy format overall, and I think bringing Quest Rogue is a great read in reaction to that. And yes, you have to then respect it and ban it out, much as we talked in our first series about the Recruit Hunter or Death Rattle Hunter ban or first pick that we've seen in most series, because again, that's a super clutch deck to have in your disposal when you're going to be facing Quest Warriors, Control Priests, Control Mages, and so on. Yeah,
funnily enough, as we take a look at how the matchups line up, Russian Federation actually dropped the Hunter and actually ended up getting it banned as one of the last bans. But didn't pick it up early, even though they brought Quest Rogue. Maybe that's the response to the Rogue being banned?
I can explain that one for you as well, Raven.
Go on.
It's Spell Hunter.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so they've instead, most teams have gone for Recruit Hunter, Death Rattle Hunter as their Hunter deck, and then gone for Odd Rogue as their Rogue deck. Whereas we've seen some go for Miracle Rogue and now Quest Rogue in there. That is their big, like, control killer deck. But I will say, when you're building a lineup like this, you do want redundancy, right? You want multiple control killers in there, because one of them is going to end up getting banned away if it's scary for the lineup that the other team brought.
Yeah, and we can see the players just getting ready to race. You know, we've talked about a little bit as well. You can see him is there, you know, up front and center to take game number 1 for Brazil. But Renman, a player that, you know, might not come straight to your thoughts as you think of Russian players, right? We look at Stanu Dachi, Silver Name, huge names. But Renman and the
Pavel, where's that guy?
Yeah, where are you, Pavel? I think we are going to see Pavel soon, though.
You little Skulig, where are you?
Skollig means a schoolboy, right?
Yeah, like little schoolboy or something.
Yeah. It was his loved nickname from a lot of the Hearthstone community, or at least from the players and the people at
I'm
the
trusting
event, so.
like Dr. Hippie on that, so he may have just made me say something horribly offensive
very
on air,
true.
for all I know.
And I've called Pavel that a lot, to be completely honest.
In which case, I apologize wholeheartedly.
Mr. Pavel.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's get into game number 1. Race going to be on this Priest, which seems to be just the Priest list to run so far in this tournament. We've not seen really much, if any, of Divine Spirit in a fire on stream at least. And then, you know, looks like Russia going with, guess what? It's even lock. It is, right? Just gotta double check.
The Warlock is even lock, yes.
I feel like there's something in putting Gen Greymane in your deck that makes you get Mountain Giant. I feel like I don't often cast games of even lock where they don't have Giant on 3 or 4.
Well, you draw a lot of cards.
That is true.
The extra life tap on 1 actually like adds a lot more percentage to Giant on 3 or 4.
Along with a normally full mulligan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so consistent. Just a consistent 8/8 on turn 4. Ooh. Well, there is now the Dragon activation and the Twilight Acolyte in the opening hand as well, so there is the chance at negating the power of one of those giants. You okay there, friend?
Talk dirty to me, Mountain Giants.
I thought you could ask me to. I was like, no.
We'll deal with that later. And so that right there is a result that I feel very conflicted about. Although actually, we were informed through our comms that the UK had won, and my interpretation of that graphic is that Finland won 3-2, which is the result, as the massive turncoat I am, that I'm actually very happy about. It's had it confirmed it is Finland that won 3-2, so that is fantastic news for everyone's favourite smug Hearthstone caster, Mr. Simon Sotter-Welch, who pulls back to level pegging 1-1 on the prediction board at the expense of his native country.
Well, look, I'm going to sum up this one day of Hearthstone, and we're only in match 3.
Yeah.
So far, Sottle has pledged allegiance to the United States.
To the flag of the United States of America.
Yeah. And so he's gone full American and now gone full Finland at the, as you said, at the expense of our home country. So I don't know if you're really welcome back anymore, to be honest, mate.
I'm gonna start saying pants and French fries and aluminum and router, all while sitting in a sauna. There you go, covered.
So the Finland aspect of it.
Yes.
Okay.
It's true. I have been to Finland multiple times, and they're obsessed with saunas.
Oh, really?
That's not even like a stereotype that doesn't hold true. Like they just love a good sauna.
So he doesn't strike me as a sauna guy.
Never asked him actually.
Next time. Although is he American now?
He's American now.
What's going on? At least I'm still from the UK, and to continue to be in the UK as you. I was going to say a bad word then. As you go to all these other countries that you
What do you call those things you're wearing on your legs?
Jeans.
Okay. Okay. Well played.
Leg socks.
Leg socks.
Well, leg gloves is probably better. People are just like, wait, what has he got under that desk? You'll never know.
Anyway, Hearthstone, very important and serious game. We watched this matchup earlier, and I was very, very impressed with the USA's play in the way that they engineered their Mountain Giants. Russia don't really have that luxury. They don't have like the auxiliary threat that they want to go through. But it did make very clear to me, you know, how key that interaction between Twilight Acolyte is. Because, you know, you were the first person to bring it up, you know, pointing out that, you know, yeah, you've got a Spellbreaker in your hand and you can silence your Mountain Giant back to an 8/8, but then there's just an 8/4 on board that naturally contests it anyway. So how much, you know, value does that get? USA were able to engineer a situation where they got a 4/9 on board first, which seemed counterintuitive until you realize that allowed them to trade through the 4/8 and consolidate their 8/8 on board. Russian Federation don't have that luxury, so they just have to go ahead and play the Mountain Giant and just hope for the best.
They do have other options, though, because in this instance, they do have Spellstone, so they could just silence the Giant a turn later and Spellstone the 8/4.
Right.
Or they could just say, actually, we could put more taunts afterwards,
Yep.
you know, and try and just put something in the way, because there's no Shadow Word Pains, right? You know, there's none of the usual, oh, go away, annoying little minion. It doesn't really work anymore in current Priest, so they do have options, but I'll admit they are not as clean as Team USA had earlier today. That was just very crisp, clean play, whereas this is more, okay, then I guess we play Spellstone, we float mana, never mind, we have Life Tap. So there's different options, they're just not as good because it doesn't develop additional minions.
Twilight Acolyte does come down as expected.
It's also just Hellfire next turn if they really wanted to, you know, actually clear the board with everything, just leave the Giant.
Yeah.
You are open to a Cabal Shadow Priest, which is the little bit scary thing, which is why I was initially looking at, say, Spellbreaker, clear the 3/3 with the Giant, and then just have the taunt up. But then the taunt could be Cabaled anyway, and then the trade happens.
Yes.
It's very tricky.
It just goes to show you just how irritating Twilight Acolyte is as a card and why USA just did so well to play around this eventuality in the previous game. What Russia have to their advantage here is just a second Mountain Giant that they can just continue to pile on pressure with if they would like to. It does allow them to still continue to get some value out of this Mountain Giant's health, you know, trading it into the 3/3 or the 8/4 even if they really want to really completely neutralize that threat of Cabal Shadow Priest on the following turn, and they still have plenty more threats to go in hand with the second Mountain Giant.
Yeah, still so many options here, because they could also Spellstone, then double trade into the 3/3 and say, well, if you steal something, it's actually just way weaker than it would be normally.
Yeah.
And then I can deal with it with, say, a Hellfire, another Spellstone, you know, other options, maybe even just a Giant. But looks like after a bit of deliberation, they've just gone for the Giant into the additional taunt. Also, those Spellstones buffed right now. Those are looking pretty sweet with that self-damage going on very early in the game whilst holding both. That's 2 4-mana deal 7, heal 7 cards.
And Russia end up in kind of a different area even from any of the ones we discussed, with second Homunculus coming down, so that means that detracts from the Coin Cabal Shadow Priest being able to allow the A8 trade to happen.
Right.
It just can't anymore. There's a second Homunculus in the way. So this means that, you know, Brazil essentially can do what they want with that 8/4. It's going to be going into a 2/4, and Russia have just prioritized getting another huge threat down on board. This is what I lean towards, finding some way to engineer a second Mountain Giant on board, which was safe from removal, and yeah, the second Homunculus coming down achieves that perfectly.
Does Race and Team Brazil ever take this very slowly right now? They have access to coin into Psychic Scream, so they could just make this trade, heal, pass. Because then some of the board trades away with itself. They have to kill the Acolyte because it's too much of a threat to the Giant. And you can just heal, pass, wait. Don't do anything too crazy. Sure, you can take, what, 12? But then you just Psychic Scream the 2 Giants away. And then you have, you know, 1 turn leeway and then Anduin. I think that's the plan overall here.
I think it's reasonable, yeah. I definitely think coining Psychic Scream can be very important in this matchup if you don't find a way to deal with the Mountain Giants, because, you know, we keep pointing this out. We've cast this matchup a couple of times now, but the Mountain Giants are so key because Shadow of Death is one of the cards that's just fallen by the wayside in a lot of the Priest decks, so you don't have good ways to deal with Mountain Giants this early. But, you know, the downside of the Psychic Scream play is, you know, they take a beating here. Like, Russia can just recognize the situation if they want to and just go face. And then Psychic Scream happens, and then Russia have the impetus to be able to just develop threats again. But with both Mountain Giants gone, of course, the threats aren't going to be a game-ending amount of damage on the board in one turn.
It's the fact that it's a maximum of a 6/6. You know, in most circumstances, right? Like, there's nothing really bigger that's going to happen.
Yeah, Twilight Drake plus something.
Sure. So it's like you look at it 6 power max, and that's it. And then you have Anduin afterwards, and you can like defend for 1 more turn, play Anduin. So like you said, these are the 2 big like marquee threats in the deck. They're going to clear as well.
And I think this is the strongest play you can make against Psychic Scream as well, because you don't end up diluting your deck too much. Although playing the Sun Fury does tend to make that a little bit more counterintuitive, because if you're tapping so often here that you're going to go ahead and just draw Mountain Giant again from your deck very quickly, putting a Sun Fury there does tend to dilute your draws just a little bit. And the other reason I really wanted to Hellfire this turn, was going to bring this up, is because, as I mentioned, if the Scream happens, you have a turn where you have impetus to play again yourself, and, well, getting yourself down to 15 with the Hellfire is huge, because then you can play another big threat on the following turn.
So now looking how this board is shaped up, everything changes right now. Holy Fire on the 8/5 Giant. There's only 4 power on the board. Worst case, it gets silenced, the second Mountain Giant.
Correct.
You get hit for 10, puts you to 7. But then you can Scream.
Puts you to 12, because you would have healed with the Holy Fire.
Oh, sorry, yeah. And then you can just either Scream on curve or coin Anduin. So I think Holy Fire here is really nice, and it was a good sell from Renman just to be able to say, as you said, the Scream just isn't that good anymore.
Yeah.
But this is also really great, and I think Remen and Russia are probably just going to go for this silence. Priest doesn't have any good silence targets anyway.
Agreed. There's the Twilight Drake, which can be useful. You know, like Silence Defile is usually pretty nice against it. But you know, if you're going to give me a 4-mana 4/3 that deals 6 damage, I'm on board.
Your magic shall not save you.
And now, again, the second protector is just to push as much damage as possible.
I guess so, because now with the they're thinking about, now that we've hit turn 7 for Brazil, they're not just thinking about Psychic Scream anymore. Now they're thinking about Coin Anduin. So yes, the Sun Fury is arguably worse to play against Psychic Scream, but obviously much, much better to play against Coin Anduin. Double Mind Blast hand already, though.
Whoa.
That is a lot of damage, and that might be very tempting now for Brazil to be going down that route of just trying to win the game on the spot next turn. Little do they know that I believe these are 2 double buffed Spellstones in hand for Russia currently off the Volga Homunculus.
It's definitely a funny one as well, because at this point, if you were Spellstone in next turn, or you want to heal, then you'd like Reaver Spellstone, but there needs to be something to Spellstone.
Yeah, there is. There's some Sun Fury Protectors on the board that you're okay with shooting down, right, in a desperate situation.
Right, but that's why Psychic Scream would be insane this turn,
okay,
right?
sure, yeah,
Like, because then there's... I got my set... Oh, wait. It's like, it's dead now. So, Brazil could put them in an extremely awkward situation right now if the Scream on curve happens, and it definitely isn't a bad play.
Still going Dustbreaker, Twilight Acolyte here, just trying to take the board again, and this threatens lethal just as effectively, if not more so, than the Shadow Reaper Anduin does. And pretty much solves the same problem, taking care of all those small minions that they just didn't really want to deal with.
And just as likely as there's a Spellstone, there's also a Shroom Brewer, right? So it's not like the hard play was to Scream so they can't Spellstone a minion except for their own.
Yeah.
A Shroom Brewer does an extremely similar job.
And this is really well engineered now, because I think Brazil might have even just mapped this out in their discussions, where they say, okay, if we Duskbreaker and then Twilight Acolyte them, what their response is going to be Hooked Reaver Spellstone, right? Like so often. It just Hooked Reaver is so likely to be in hand at this point. They're below 15, so they want to play a Hooked Reaver, and then any Spellstone that's even been buffed once takes care of this 8/4. So if that's the play that they make, suddenly we then have an even better Shadow Reaper Anduin turn on the follow-up, and we get more information about how hard we can go in with our Mind Blasts, right? Because you've already seen then one Spellstone get used. They've revealed that information that it's in the hand. I think that turn last time from Brazil was a really good spot, and actually has really helped them turn the corner in this matchup.
Yeah, really well navigated, and also they have now a small window before Gul'dan is even available, and Gul'dan, even with the burst from Priest, unless you have, say, triple Mind Blast, double Mind Blast, Holy Fire, for example, like, that is difficult to burst through, to be completely honest, because you can still only do so much damage a turn, whilst Gul'dan is healing for 3 every single time, plus heals like Shroom Brewer, as I said. That's a little bit scary right now. Dread Inferno's a very clean clear up here, but that means no Spellstone. Problem here is nothing quite fits. It's like a puzzle that you need to just chop one of the pieces in half to be able to finish it. And it's mainly because they can't heal and clear the 3/1 in any good way, or they can't play the Lich King and do anything defensive as well. So nothing really fits together. And this is a huge problem, because if this 3/1 gets to attack again, well, it's just like a 1.5 Anduin hero powers on its own. So it looks like Russian Federation have gone for the Infernal and the Ooze just to put as much threats on the board as possible and hope they're safe at 19. They haven't seen a Shadow Visions this game yet, so they know there's not going to be triple Mind Blast in hand, at least.
16 is the number that they'll be worried about, and they've seen the Holy Fire get used as well, so that's also making them more resistant to like the Freeze Mage style setups, right? Of like, ping, Holy Fire, ping, and then unleash the big Mind Blast combo on the following turn.
Well, this is also tricky, right? Because Brazil are pretty low themselves, so if they scream and ping for 2. Puts them to 17, which is scary a little bit. But then we can see it's just Gul'dan, so Russia's kind of then flipped the board and said, well, actually, you're kind of in checkmate right now. Like, your plays don't work either way, because you can't really kill a 6/6 anymore. This Shadow Vision's just going to have to pull something else out the back here, maybe a Divine Hymn.
I was going to say they can ping for board here if they really want to, and then just leave the 6/6 in play, knowing fairly safe in the knowledge that they're not going to die from hand from Russian Federation. And then, yeah, they can just get that little bit of damage, develop a 4/7 on board, which demands an answer from the opponent. And now, at least if Blood Reaver Gul'dan comes down, they have some kind of board presence that can answer a 2/4, but they'll likely just end up Psychic Screaming anyway. But I guess in the worlds where Gul'dan doesn't happen, or at least in a spot where they've got 4 more damage on board, just pushing away.
No surprise here. If Gul'dan is played, it's probably just the single strongest turn you can make in this deck outside of Mountain Giant on 3. And as I said, the damage, the hero power itself is just insane. It's just something that Priest can't really keep up with. It doesn't have tons of heal. It has a couple of hymns, you know, and that's really it. Once the proc Anduin, of course. I'm surprised they're taking this long, to be completely honest.
They're considering Gen Greymane Spellstone, which is also a very, very strong play here because it also threatens lethal. It also kind of demands the opponent to Psychic Scream, and it also pulls them above 16, which is the number they need to play around. The argument for that I'm sure someone is presenting is like, hey, we can get him to Psychic Scream, and then we just Gul'dan, and then we win the game because they don't have their Psychic Scream anymore. And then someone is just piping up in response to that and saying, well, yeah, but we could just play Gul'dan and win the game right now.
Right, and the big thing for me is you're dodging 4 damage because there's 2 taunts in Gul'dan. Like, if those homunculus weren't there, I think there's a stronger argument for killing off the Drake and healing. But with 2 taunts, like, what's Brazil going to do? You've seen one Dustbreaker, so they can't. That 4 damage doesn't exist to face right now.
I think also a point for the Gen play, though, is something that you alluded to earlier, using the Spellstone to kill a minion while a minion's in play, so you don't end up having to Spellstone your own minions and releasing pressure, just so you get that full heal for 7, which probably pulls you out of range of Brazil's burst combo for the whole game. But yeah, I'm fully on board with just playing Gul'dan because you essentially get that healing back through the extra turn you spend pressing the hero power anyway if you play Gul'dan 1 turn earlier.
And now follow up like Lich King hero power, Spellstone hero power, Hellfire hero power. You know, like this starts getting just too much to handle. And it's all because Psychic Scream is, I think, perfectly costed, in my opinion. If that was like 1 mana cheaper and you can deal 4 damage, for example, it would be so insane.
I would argue that could be 1 mana more expensive, and it would still be a perfectly reasonable card.
Sure. I mean, I was meaning more if it got any cheaper. It's extremely scary at that point.
But I take umbrage with calling Psychic Scream perfectly costed when Twisting Nether, a worse card, is 8 mana.
Is it strictly worse?
No, I did not use that word deliberately, Raven, and you still went there. It is not strictly worse.
Death and Decay is just extra damage as well. There is the Divine Hymn, but you have to Divine Him, you have to kill an 8/8, you have to find a way to also kill Gul'dan at some point. Like, that's a lot of, a lot of branching paths, and you are not the Druid.
You have to time travel into the future, find some card from the Boomsday expansion that gets you out of this mess.
There probably is, let's be honest.
Illegally put it into your deck, then somehow draw it off the Shadow Visions. Let's pretend it's a spell in this hypothetical nonsense
Legendary spell. Legendary Priest spell. Win the game.
Legendary spell, there you go.
Win the game.
Sounds like a Druid card.
Yeah, they have 2 of those. It's not even legendary.
Yeah.
It's just that, is it epic? Epic. Second Scream. It's the way they're going to try and deal with this, but it doesn't matter. It's not going to work.
They did it.
Because Team Russia have Death and Decay and the hero power. Or let's pick the real card right now. The Hellfire Lethal, as I feel is becoming a theme of the day. And Renman, Team Russia take the first win over Brazil. Gotta be excited with that one, because that matchup looked dicey for a few moments there, especially with the 2 Twilight Acolytes causing certain levels of havoc.
Yeah, I think there was 1 turn where Brazil potentially spotted a nice spot to get the strong Shadow Reaper Anduin down, where they took the turn first to Dustbreaker and clear up all the little pleb minions, and then they just had that really strong swing with the Shadow Reaper Anduin afterwards. The problem was that they just had on Russia's side. They just had the refill again at that point, just to ask questions once more, not allow the priest, not allow Brazil to fall back into that rhythm of just play a card at random, ping, play a card, ping, play a card, ping. Like they had to constantly be allocating so much mana to deal with threats because of all the damage that got pushed by Mountain Giants, silenced Mountain Giants, smack them again. Like that amount of damage in the early game changes the complexion of the entire match from that point on.
Yeah, the dance in that matchup is kind of funny, just with the acolytes and how you deal with it. We've seen it like twice today in completely different ways to deal with it. Actually, one is to just say, I'll just put other stuff in the way, and then you have to. It's probably going to die. It's still only a 4 health minion, and the other way was obviously the fun we had with Team USA a little bit earlier on. But excuse me. Any more highlights? We didn't really get to dive too much into the list, but outside of the rogues, any more highlights as we look at what the next matchup is going to be?
I think we have Paladin versus Mage coming up, yes, as our graphics confirm it. The Paladin from Brazil's side is most likely going to be Odd Paladin, but I believe you have their lists over on your side.
Paladin, 1 Void Ripper, and then everything else looks as standard as it can be. Fireflies are in there, and the 1 Divine Favor, yeah.
I've got some bad news on Russia's side, though.
Go on.
They've gone aggro Mage, and they're running it into an Odd Paladin. And that's just not good news.
What, with all those single target, like 1 damage effects? Is that not good versus unlimited hero power?
I mean, Arcane Missiles and Cinderstorm have definitely given a chance to the matchup, and we've seen 1 or 2 aggro mages over the years tech in, over the last few months at least, tech in a Arcane Explosion to try and win that matchup. But still, it's just such a struggle because we've described this before, I think, with Murloc Mage. We were talking about this at HCT Italy, but you kind of queue into that matchup for the first time, and even like you play Mana Worm or you don't, it doesn't really matter. And then in response, they press their hero power, and suddenly it dawns on you that they're gonna do that every single turn, and the one turn you don't kill all of them, which is about turn 3. Like, that's about when you run out of ways to kill all their stuff. They have so many snowball tools available in the deck that you just can't race them. It's so hard to do.
Yeah, in terms of deck building as well, it's not like you can even expect or even, to be honest, consider putting a card like Arcane Explosion or tech that specific because, one, you can't even expect to run into Paladin for 1 deck. And also, you don't know if the team might ban Mage for whatever reason. Maybe unlikely because it's aggro. But yeah, it's so specific that you can't really tech for it. I think a lot of the tech for this deck building comes in the pick and bans, right? What are you expecting to ban? So what decks are you going to take that are going to be good against the classes that you're expecting left?
Yeah, and I think in particular, like, Arcane Explosion is just such a bad card. Like
everywhere else,
right?
Yeah.
There's just so many cards that are brought into decks that are kind of nodding towards Paladin, right? Like Dread Infernal is a card that's nodding towards Paladin. Despicable Dreadlord is a card that's nodding towards Paladin. But those cards have plenty of other uses elsewhere, whereas Arcane Explosion is just such a hot dumpster fire in every other matchup apart from Odd Paladin that you just cannot justify putting it in your deck for a wide format tournament like this.
Yeah, and as you can see on the screen there, we do have updates from matches that are being played off stream. Greece versus Mexico, so another battle including the South Americas region. It's going to be 1-0 to Greece, I believe, so far. So nice win for Greece. I like watching the Greeks play, to be honest. Like last year, that was definitely one of the highlights. They're very rambunctious players, to be honest.
Yes, very, very loud, very animated. They all group together again. I don't think we've seen a team today so far group together on camera, which they are entitled to do. The players that you're seeing so far are all communicating over Discord or whatever other tool they want to use. But of course, they're welcome and in fact encouraged to all turn up and play together. And Greece did that regularly last year and definitely appeared to be having a good time with their games of Hearthstone.
Yeah, I think some of the teams that really stick out last year that physically got together, and we saw it yesterday, Philippines was a big one as well. And then we saw Korea sometimes got together, depending on any given week. I guess mainly tournament schedule is the big question for a lot of these players.
Austria as well was another big
Austria,
one. Gathering at Casa del Life Coach.
Czech Republic as well. Those guys are there, although the team is looking. I don't think they're all going to Sivka's house anymore.
No.
I believe it was Sivka's place
I
they
think
went
so,
to.
yeah, I believe so.
Now they're just out on the streets. Grouped up.
Not only did Sivka single-handedly carry them to victory, he also housed and fed them for the duration. No, I'm kidding. I think since we're here, I might as well address the point. I think we made a big deal last year about, you know, how Sivka was, you know, had the final sign-off on all the plays and was really the leader of the team. And perhaps undersold how good, for example, Yala is as an individual player on Team Czech Republic. So I think even this year, without Stan Sivka available to them, I think Czech Republic will be...
Not a team to be trifled with, regardless. But to be honest, almost all the teams is getting quite difficult again because of the way the teams are selected based on their point scoring. They are literally the highest point earners in their country at the given time where the cutoff was for the qualification to be put forward for the global games. So all the players are at minimum pretty good at Hearthstone. So we are going to see some strong teams play out. I'm sorry about the delay. The players are just making sure they are ready, making sure everything's going to run smooth for you guys. So it looks like the players are ready, as we can see Silvername and Neves or Neves?
Neves, I believe.
Neves, I thought so. I just wanted to double check. But yeah, Silvername, a face and a name you will be pretty familiar with, is pretty much...
As a warning, sorry to cut you off, but if you are a civilian, if you're a Silvername muggle in chat right now who's wondering what's going on, it's Silvername's fault, okay? Just it's fine. His viewers are very passionate, and I imagine that there is a lot of Russian support going on in Twitch chat right now.
It would not surprise me. He has a very what's the word I would like to use? Yeah, okay.
Enthusiastic
will do, yeah. A very enthusiastic following, and it pretty much extends to if he plays another like streamer, popular player on ladder, and they're streaming, their viewers may increase for a short period of time as they all dive in to say hello. But yeah, I would say Silvername, a staple of the Russian scene since day one, more or less. Like, he's been around for a very, very long time.
He's almost like, I want to make the comparison of like Russian ties in this point of like, you know, very, very like different personalities, but someone who started off playing competitively because kind of everyone did when they got good at Hearthstone.
Right.
Then you switched over to streaming and content creation, but every now and again he just dusts off the old deck and just runs into a tournament and gets a good result, you know, because he's that good when it comes to the game.
Every now and again he puts on his lucky pants and sits down to play a Hearthstone tournament.
He wears Stanudachi to go to a tournament.
Ah, nice. That was completely on purpose by me. So let's get into the game without further ado. Again, apologize for the slight delay there, but it's going to be Silvername versus Neves, Russia Federation versus Brazil. Game number 2. Are Russia going to continue to run away with this series?
No. Next question.
Is the sky blue?
Yes. Keep them coming.
Is it? I thought the answer was like no.
It's like, it's a refraction through the atmosphere. Yeah, sure. It's a complicated question.
So you lied.
Yeah. Water is not wet though, by the way.
My mind is blown. But, okay, serious question. Why not? So let's give the
viewers,
let's educate
wet?
some viewers.
Because
no, I was about the hands. I was trying to be serious. I was like, but why are they not going to win? Would we like to have a educational talk about the hands?
But
no. Why isn't water wet?
Because wetness is a word that you use to describe something that comes in contact with water. Water itself cannot be wet, but yes. Paladin versus Mage is, I've already kind of described the matchup, right? Like, Paladin's going to play a 1-drop here, Mage is going to play nothing, Paladin is going to press the hero power button, and then the game's just kind of over at that point. Like, what more do you want from me?
Blood, Saul.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not that good.
I just don't believe that you believe that.
I definitely don't.
There we go. Pyroblast, though. Well, we'll see what goes on here. The Explosive Ruins does have a habit of actually dealing high amounts of damage against Paladin because, say it comes out on a Fungal Mancer turn, you know, a lot of the minions actually end up playing are so low health that you can push some sneaky damage through like that. It's not like there's a minion that Paladin can generally play that soaks 5 to 6 damage anyway.
Right.
So that's going to be a little bit dicey. The Armani Berserker is there, and it has, you know, that along with the Arcanologist does have a decent stat line to keep trading with these 1/1s, but it's a finite resource issue, right, in the grand scheme of things.
Must move quickly.
Saul's just done casting this game. He just gave us the one sentence. He's clocked right out. He's just like, yeah, I mean, this is how the game's played. I've solved it. Next.
It's true, though. Look, they pressed the button on 2.
Okay. So far, you are correct.
And there's exactly that look on his face that I described. Look at Silvername. He's just realised.
He's He has just realized how this matchup works.
Yes.
Is that what you say? It's Silvername, a player who plays more Hearthstone than most of the people in the world, has only just realized how this matchup's played out. Would you say this is one of the most one-sided matchups in the game right now?
One of. There's kind of the reverse where it's like odd Paladin versus Control Warriors, be it
right.
Quest Warrior or Dead Man's Hand. I think like Murloc Mage is perhaps even worse against odd Paladin than Aggro Mage is. So there's a few of them hanging about, but it's a pretty bad one for sure. But now, actually, we do have some real decisions, so I'll start to take this a little bit more seriously. Champion's Maul here enables a full board clear, but Akaris Veteran plus pressing the hero power actually nets you the most board presence over the course of a couple of turns, by which I mean if you press Champion's Maul, yes, you get some 1/1s, but you don't press the button this turn. Those 2 1/1s are always inside your Champion's Maul. They'll always come out eventually, whereas if you don't press the button this turn, you have essentially killed those 2 dudes. You've murdered them forever. They never, no, worse than that, they never actually got to live in the first place.
Oh god, it's the, what's the film called? Has it just got the butterfly effect?
There is a film called The
Where
Butterfly
it
Effect.
ends up being that he just isn't... Oh wait, spoiler. He ends up being that he just effectively just never gets born.
Sure,
Right.
sounds about right, yeah.
But I'm more interested in how there are 2 people in that weapon. Do you just hit someone with it and 2 people just roll out? Ugh,
Yeah.
we've been waiting in there for a while.
That's exactly what happens.
Okay. Sol dropping the law bombs.
Yep. That's just how WoW works.
Yeah, there's a few more minions on the Paladin side of the board, isn't there?
Yes. Next question.
What does Mage need to do?
Start finding the missile effects, start finding Primordial Glyph, and get some strong options off the Primordial Glyph. You know, be it that Arcane Explosion, be it any other tool that helps them come back more missile effects, because those are really where the game's at. Or we were talking about, you know, getting a time machine in the previous series of Priest going to the future to find an answer. Silvername needs to go back to the past and find a Flame Waker in his deck. Like, that's about where this matchup comes down, because Flame Waker was, again, kind of the tool that allowed these kind of aggro mage decks to win against Zoo, say, back in the day, and other aggro decks. You know, Haunted Creeper decks, for example, when they were around, you needed
Secret
Flame
Paladin.
Waker to interact with them. Secret Paladin, exactly. So since those kind of tools have disappeared, even Cinderstorm and Arcane Missiles are just pretty inefficient most of the time.
So now I'm wondering, if you were Silvername and Team Russia,
Yeah.
do you just aim everything at face and say, well, if he's going to have a full board anyway all the time, do we just not care about killing? You know, is that the opposite way to go around it? If I can never kill all of these dudes, he can only have 7.
I think that,
you know, and just get him.
That, as the mage, that does have to be your goal unless you get a very specific Arcane Missile Cinderstorm heavy hand. And then if that doesn't happen, you essentially just go face a lot, and you end up winning in the world in the like small percentage draw where the Paladin never draws level up, never finds Fungalmancer, never picks up Tarim off Stonehill Defender, because they just don't have enough damage over the course of the game to beat you that way, right?
Because I will say again, like this list, as we can quite clearly see, does a Pyroblast in there, and Paladin can't really heal, so you do have the option of, if you last that long and don't die, 10 damage to face often finishes that game if you've gone all out. But the issue right now is there's not much chance for development. And some of the things you can't ignore are cards like Raid Leader, because it nets so... This is a 4-attack Raid Leader right now, and it's only going to get bigger every single turn.
Yeah, there's only, what, 16 damage in hand right now, and that costs 14 mana to cast, and one of them isn't playable at all until turn 10.
Right.
So, you know, right now, if you don't get to turn 10, your hand has 6 damage in it, and your opponent's at 25. So you can see, like, the burn plan is still very unlikely.
There's a decent turn here in Apprentice into the Explosive Runes and a pink. That's fairly decent.
It's also 6 mana.
Oh, yeah. Without the ping, then. Remove the ping.
It's quite a lot worse without the ping, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I'm digging a hole for myself.
Do you want to have another go?
Frostbolt Face, let's go. No, Frostbolt Face Explosive Runes. That's reasonable. Lock out the weapon. Get the runes on board. Do my other turn next turn in the future.
Okay.
Because we can travel back in time and pretend I didn't say that. Since we're time traveling a lot in this series for some reason.
Stonehill Defender is a pretty good option to be able to drop into an explosive runes just for minimal damage. So I imagine that's what's going to lead out here. There are some options here off Stonehill Defender, like exactly Rotten Applebaum, that can help them to stabilize against this kind of position. Although, you know, Silvername, if he sees a Rotten Applebaum come down onto the board and he's committed to a burn plan, he's not going to be killing it, nor is he going to be playing minions outside of like Life Drinker, for example.
I would love it if you said an option's exactly like Lord of the Arena. And you're like, wait, what? But yeah, the Applebaum is a huge problem, right? I will say his hand does lean itself towards not playing minions right now.
Are we swinging the weapon because of thoughts of Coin Vine Cleaver next turn? I think that's definitely something that will be going in deep discussion through the Brazil comms right now.
I also think there's just enough dudes to deal with any random minion that gets played anyway. You don't really want to damage yourself with the weapon regardless. So the weapon's going face for me, but I guess not. I guess worst case, if this is literally your best turn to do that, you just lose 2 damage. It's probably not the end of the world.
Sure. Counterspell now picked up, but too late to be combined with the Kirin Tor Mage, at least for this turn. And Counterspell is an important option, which is another argument as to not use that coin, because there aren't many spells in your deck, and one of them, particularly Level Up, is extremely powerful. So you want to make sure that that is able to be activated. The cheapest way to be able to do that is just to keep hold of coin at all times.
I do love the Frostbolt phase, because guess what? That also counterspells the weapon. At this point,
counterspells the weapon.
They can't Coin Vine Cleaver. Well, they can, but it doesn't do much.
Sure.
And then also there's, unfortunately, the mana didn't add up to be able to get a ping off instead, because you couldn't, Silvername couldn't Frostbolt, or save the second one, should I say, for, you know, turn number 2, Frostbolt face, and then no swing again.
I like this though, getting the Applebaum down nice and early. It's a good chunky threat. It's pushing 4 damage a turn, which is plenty, and the longer it's on the board, the harder it is for Silvername to think about ignoring it for the entire game.
Right. Still, though, positive of Kirin Tor is that again, just playing it actually doesn't kill the Applebaum anyway, so there's some things to consider there. Keysmith, always flexible, but with the runes and the counterspell already in hand, how many turns are you playing on playing secrets, right?
Sure.
Unless, I mean, Barrier's pretty good.
It's okay.
By the turn to get to turn 10, you know, it could help.
Yep. But 3 of that 16 damage we counted originally was used to take care of a raid leader, so the clock's been set back as well for Russia in the world of just firing burn at face. And like it's so difficult again for aggro mage because they've lost, for example, Fireland's Portal in the recent rotation. So actually, the total amount of damage in the deck is just nowhere near what it used to be.
Yeah, and value too. Like, you know, that Fireland's Portal often could get you a really good minion that say kills another minion, or maybe even 2, depending on what comes out of it. It's crazy. Now we see the usual Blast of Might on the Divine Shield minion just to make it as awkward as possible to clear, and might even just take down the 4/3 at this point.
I think I'd rather have a Divine Shielded 4/1 than have a bunch of health on my Rotten Applebaum that I kind of want to die at some point this game.
I also wonder whether you just go face. Just end the game quicker. Do you need to kill the 4/3?
That's a good argument.
If they get through the taunt, then you've healed for the attack the 4/3 made anyway, right?
I think the Argent Squire goes face, but I think, you know, there is value in trading the Rotten Applebaum just for that security of healing, but I definitely can get down with the phase plan. You know, I had this argument with you yesterday, as I think quite often...
Discussion? Well, argument might be a bit strong.
People give the word argument a bad name. You can have, like, a constructive argument.
Yeah, but no one does.
You can have a civil argument.
But no one does.
That's because they're idiots. Okay, this one does surprise me. I think if you're going to leave some ping targets on the board...
It's just my casting power, so people make the plays I suggest. We've proven this.
This does very much surprise me, though, because, again, you haven't seen any Arcane Missiles, you haven't seen any Cinderstorms, and there's just the natural 2-mana ping that Mage has access to. Of those 2 minions, which one would you rather have die?
Well, now the Applebaum would have died, and then, yeah, heal. Let's go.
I guess the counter-argument is to say, okay, if you trade a 4/5 into a 4/3, you then have a 4/1 and essentially a 4/2 on board, right? Yeah. That's what a Divine Shielded 4/1 is against a Missiles deck. So you actually lose a lot less total health off the board by trading with the Divine Shield.
So it's actually more likely it dies.
In the Applebaum trade world, there's then a world where both of those minions die to a Cinderstorm. Alright, I can get down with it.
Ooh, 2-0 now to Greece versus Mexico.
Tarim.
Yeah, don't need Tyrion. It does not heal you, and you have more than enough damage in this deck right now. Oh, those stone hills have done so much work. It could very easily be 13 health right now.
Yeah.
Maybe more as well, but just I'm saying very easily be 13.
Yep.
And that's way more realistic to survive maybe one more turn, do 3 damage, and then pyroblast someone. That's it's pretty nuts actually. Those stone hills do an amazing job.
I think it's time to set up lethal though for Brazil, which they have a variety of ways to do now thanks to that Sunkeeper Tarim.
They are not aware of this secret, right? They don't know it's counterspell? Right.
No, they do, because it's a natural
Oh,
secret.
because right.
It's a natural secret of runes just procs,
yeah.
so therefore it is counterspell.
Oh, all right.
All right, mate, chill out.
Don't slam the door on your way out.
Yeah, and this is the cleanest way to set up the lethal because it's like the double, triple, quadruple threat. They have to do way too much. Does Russia to be able to counteract that? And honestly, as soon as they queued into that matchup, they had to do way too much to counteract it. You know, we had our fun with it at the beginning. Of course, it's a serious matchup where both people are going to try and play it out, but it's borderline unwinnable at a top level for the Mage.
Yeah, I think so. There are definitely things like a Mana Worm would... Extra points of damage might have helped, and I honestly believe, outside of Stonehills or Corridor Creepers, if your average minion got hit by the runes twice instead of 2 Stonehills, those numbers look a little bit closer, but you can see there that it was never under control for the Mage, was it, right? Like, Russia would never, okay, I think we've got this now. It was like, please next draw be amazing. Please next draw be amazing. You know, every single
time. That's what it comes down to. Of course, there are draws that can win. You know, if you Mana Worm on 1, you Arcanologist on 2, you Cinderstorm on 3 and get good missiles, and then you have Alaneth later in the game and you push damage. Of course, you can win. But I've just described a very specific scenario, and that's kind of what defines a bad matchup.
That's Hearthstone.
All the worlds where that doesn't happen are the ones where you lose.
Yep, so that's all even now for Brazil and the Russian Federation. We've got more matches coming up, but we'll be right back after this, so don't go anywhere. To the global games, indeed, we are here, and we're going to continue this match between the Russian Federation and Brazil. And I'm still a little bit upset every time I see that video. Those 4 went for a drink with ours.
I know.
It's a bit mean, isn't it?
Yeah. Story of my life, except it's usually my choice.
Do you come out for something to eat? No.
I'm going back to my hotel room to be in the company of exactly nobody for 12 hours.
Oh, 100% true.
That is 0% a joke as well.
Yeah, that's not even a joke in any way, shape, or form. But this series is no joke for these players either, as we got Warlock going up against Shaman. And what's the Warlock deck for Brazil? I have the Brazil list, so I'll tell you. I'm casting with no one else, just me.
Okay. I'll just narrate what's going on in my head as you do this.
I don't want to know. I thought it was going to be the monkey with the symbols.
That works too.
Yeah, but the Warlock, as we can see, is the even lock, and to no one's real surprise, maybe a tiny bit of surprise, it's another Shudderwock Shaman, which why aren't we seeing even Shaman? Why aren't we seeing even Shaman?
Because,
weird, right?
again, I think it boils down to the point that I keep hammering home, is that I think these players have worked out through their experimentation with the format, and, you know, like players are saying, they played a few scrims against some of the other teams to warm up, and you very quickly come to the realization that the format ends up being very greedy because of the decks that get eliminated.
But can even Shaman not punish that?
More so than Shudderwock Shaman?
Probably not.
Right. I mean, it can get there, of course. We've seen magical things being done with by Glory in particular at HCT playoffs, where he just waited until Hagatha and then just played every minion in his deck afterwards. But yeah, it's not a deck that's engineered to do that like Shudderwock Shaman is, where it's just, hey, if the game goes to turn 15, I win.
Yeah. And we see now as we get into, as you said, the Shudderwock Shaman, the current Mana Tide is going to help start cycling through this deck. But also the Mountain Giant in hand for Brazil means, along with number 2, they can pawn 2 threats. But guess what? There's 2 threats, but there's 2 Hex too.
The end is coming!
Very true. And this Doomsayer is one of the better responses to the Mana Tide Totem. But that Earthshock is a fantastic pickup on the other side. It will slow down the, I guess, Farsight development, if you want to look at it that way. But it looks like, wow, Fox is actually going to go for it.
I was going to ask if that Earthshock was worth it. If you said no, I would have argued with you in a friendly, constructive manner, of course, as arguments can be. I am very surprised that they did not Earthshock there. Yes, it kills a Twilight Drake, but...
That's the point, yeah. I think they feel like they have enough card draw here. When they hit Mana Tide, they drew a card, they had a Farsight in hand, they've still got Acolytes to come, and this is a matchup where you can try and engineer like Acolyte Volcano a lot of the time. And yes, they have 2 hexes, but in this matchup, a lot of the time, let's say they're not going to get 2 Mountain Giants every time, right? Like on average, you see 1 Mountain Giant in the early game, so that Mountain Giant comes down, you hex it, and then if the Twilight Drake comes down, you then have to hex that. Well, then you get into sticky spots with like Dread Infernals in the late game, right? Because Dread Infernal is actually a double threat. It hits the board, and then it also comes back later again from Gul'dan. So hexing Dread Infernal is actually really, really nice for you to be able to do. So allocating your threats in the right places are a very, very big deal for both teams in this situation. And that Earthshock, Rush should say, hey, this just lines up far too well against the Twilight Drake.
Okay, and as we see the Giant being hovered out, it's a very weird world where you don't want to just follow up a Giant after seeing a Hex. Obviously, we can see Hex number 2 is there, but let's just talk about Fox a little bit as well. You know, one of the new kids to the block in terms of global games. He was not on the team last year, and I guess he's feeling probably pretty good to make a name for himself right now. I'll hold my hands up, be completely honest. Not a player I've seen too much, personally. He's
I'm right there with you.
bit of a new kid for me. And this is, as we saw from last year, a space in which you can make it happen, right? You can make everyone know your name. Suddenly, everyone on the stream now knows who Fox is. He's playing for the Russian Federation in global games and then cycles through from there.
Yeah, I knew very little about Fox coming into this, and now I know 2 additional things. That he has quite nice hair and some lovely floral wallpaper.
Okay, cool. Second Hex coming up on the Giant. Not too many surprises here.
And now with those 2 frogs on board, Mind Control tech is potentially pretty spicy in the coming turns.
That's true, actually, yeah. I guess the chance of, say, stealing a Twilight Drake, even if you end up with a frog, it's just worth it anyway.
Especially since you free roll it, right? Like if Twilight Drake comes down, you fire off your Mind Control tech, and if you miss the Twilight Drake, you just Earthshock it afterwards.
That's true. It's definitely a bit of a head scratcher right now for Lucas and Team Brazil, because you've just had both your biggest threats in the deck nullified without any real effort, right? There was no chain of plays to deal with the Giant, similar to what we see in the Priest matchup.
Glacial Shard it 1 turn, wait for a Volcano later on.
Right, Lightning Bolt, trade like 2 Saranites, do stuff like that. So it's not happened. It was just Giant, Hex, Giant, Hex. Oh, okay, now
all right, let's play some Hearthstone.
Yeah, but then if as you said, like if Twilight Drake comes down, it's either stolen or Earthshot. It's just like, we just spent 7 turns. Yeah, we drew some cards, but we did nothing. I accomplished nothing. And you said earlier, if you have Shadow Walk for 15 turns, guess what? You probably lost.
And now Tainted Zealot hitting the board preemptively lowers the chances of that relevant minion being taken from Mind Control tech, which I do imagine is a concern. They could also have just defiled away their own frogs to stop having to worry about them, but of course Defile is a card that they will want to get some usage out of. Of course, it's not a matchup where you're going to get rushed down necessarily by the Shadowwalk Shaman's board, but there are still key times where you need to kill minions. For example, Saronite Chain Gangs, when they're in play, you want to kill them if you can, because leaving them there to then be grumbled later on can be a very big problem.
Yeah, or even Zola as well, you know, not as optimal, but still, it's still an extra Saronite proc that you can create, and there's the Earthshock. There was the Sandbinder as well, a card I actually really like, and I feel it's a shame because you don't get to play it that often, because there just aren't tons of elemental decks knocking around.
Yeah, I think these days people have gone away more so from Hemet and a little bit towards Sandbinder, which I agree with. I never really jumped on the Hemet train. I found you get into too many spots. It's like, well, I'd love to Hemet here, but I feel like I'm going to need a Healing Rain to win this game. I'd love to Hemet here, but I haven't drawn my Zola yet. And then you take Zola out of your deck and put Murmuring Elemental in, and you still just have the same problems all over again. It doesn't make any difference. So for me, like, Hemet was a card that is just wonderful in theory, but it just still engineers these really weird situations. And I think Sandbinder is quite often like the like-for-like replacement that comes in.
Yeah, and for me, it just fits in a good slot in the deck as well in terms of 4 mana. Yes, you have Saronite Chain Gang. Yes, you have Life Drinker.
Yeah.
But those are more, you combo pieces, so to speak, whereas this just helps you get there. It literally thins your deck and also can draw combo pieces itself, whether it be Glacial Shards or Grumble. It's actually just a solid all-rounder. Hope we get to see more of it.
What to do?
So Russia did turn down the mind control tech on the previous turn. Again, they have an opportunity here to go for it if they want to, and they can even take out a frog in the process to kind of secure the idea that they're picking up a relevant minion. Yeah, looks like that's going to come down. Argent Commander's gone green! Boom!
Lucas' head goes down. Fox is just like, yeah, that's how we do things. That is big though, because that is just damage that the Shaman just shouldn't be allowed at this point. And I mentioned a few times before, it doesn't often end this way, but the 17 health, yes, life taps are a thing, but Russian Federation can start like literally pressuring lethal soon. You know, it sounds really weird, but it can happen, especially if Hagatha comes down, if these minions are cleared, because then you're generating spells that, again, we should be allowed to play. Lava bursts, lightning bolts, there's tons of things that you can get that generate extra damage, even rock bioweapons.
But now, luckily, just with the way the numbers break down, and even with that Tainted Zealot on board, it's pretty trivial. The Defile can just clear up all of this mess and allow Brazil to start again. But the problem is that they just have zero threats in their hand outside of Lich King, and Lich King into this board is not a particularly appealing prospect. They really want to kind of wipe the board out and try and consolidate Lich King down again afterwards, because, yeah, I mentioned Dread Infernal was like a card that you really like to hex in this matchup. Lich King, of course, is right up there as well.
Or just tap into one of those.
That works.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Well, I was wondering whether you just make the trades into the commander and play Lich King anyway and just try and deal with it, but they're doing this instead.
I guarantee you someone on Brazil's team just found them one damage that Lucas wouldn't have had on their own, because he went to trade the Divine Shields into each other, which was my initial instinct to get the full Defile clear, and then someone on the team, I think, recognized that trading the Sun Fury instead allowed the one to go face, and then the Defile clear still happens afterwards. Not super relevant, but hey.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's one damage. Now the question happens of, do you want Hagatha live right now? Probably not. You have 3 cards in hand that are card draw effect, and Hagatha draws you a card into your hand to some extent. So that's probably just too much heat to handle if you play Hagatha right now. So they are going to pass and just get these card draw engines on board.
Yep. Hagatha just seems like it's going to get a little bit messy here for Russia if they're going to start filling up their hand. But you can see kind of how disrespectful almost they are to their own card draw here, because they've just given Brazil the juiciest of all Hellfires. One draw off a Manatide, one draw off an Acolyte. They got one draw off their first Manatide.
Yep.
Which
was completely their choice.
Yeah, of course. And it's because they've drawn all of them that they're able to only get one draw off each. You know, if you're playing the game off the back of one single Acolyte of Pain, that's suddenly where greedy things like Acolyte, Volcano start to come into play. If you draw all 4 of the minions and a Farsight as well, then yeah, one of each is perfectly reasonable.
There's a reason there's so many card draw cards in a deck that needs card draw. It's not because you need all 5 or 6, it's because you need 2, say as a rough average. So
and then they snowball from that point.
And then they get you 2 more and so on and so on, but you just need to ensure you get them early enough to work, because most card draw effects are relatively low cost anyway.
Hellfire's not even going to happen here. They're just going to go ahead and Spellbreaker the Manatide to ensure one card comes down off that. And then rely on the fact that the Acolyte isn't going to be able to farm cards too easily.
And relying on the fact that Volcano doesn't get there.
Yep.
That's the key one. Normally you don't want to leave Acolyte because Volcano makes it draw 3 cards. But not if the health is this much on board. And if you're Volcano, 1, that's over half the mana available to them gone. An Overload for 2 next turn. And guess what? Most of your stuff doesn't die. Okay.
Okay, this hand got real complicated real quick. Because the Grumble is attractive already, just because the ability to rebuy a Glacial Shard is massive, right? Because it just locks out so much damage on the board. However, this is the Zola version of the deck, which means you never find that Murmuring Elemental guaranteed 100% repetition of the Shudderwock. So your goal is to try and play as many Saronite Chain Gangs in that case as you can, and then that maximizes your percentage odds that a Chain Gang goes first and you get multiple Shudderwock activations. However, I think with this much damage on board, Russia have recognized that they can't afford to take this. And just going back to the previous turn, I think Brazil's reasoning here for choosing to go Spellbreaker instead of Hellfire, because Hellfire Twilight Drake just looked like a fantastic turn to me, but when I stopped to think about it, Brazil have kept track of what Russia have achieved this game, and the one thing they're yet to do, really, is play out the Saronite Chain Gangs, which they need to. So they're saying, hey, their next turn could be Saronite Chain Gang. And then at that point, if they're using that as a blocker, then we just have this Hellfire to absolutely nuke them with damage if they have to rely on that.
That's true, and one thing I was just going to talk about is these Saronites are actually suddenly very slow.
Yes, they are.
To play both, that's pretty much a whole turn right now. The 0-mana Lightning Storm is very nice because it's always available, but you want 2 Saronites down, you need the Life Drinker down. You know, all of this has gone quite slow in a funny way because the card draw has been so heavy in this game for Russia, but they've just not quite had the time to just drop Saronites and get those effects alive, like you said. And because they didn't get them down early, it meant that the Grumble was never going to hit them because this is just too much to try and deal with. I actually really like this play as well from Brazil. We don't care, you've got Grumble on the board. Anything you do is way too slow, like Zola Grumble. Okay, you know, like, fine.
Yeah. They do have Zola Glacial Shard available again. They can fit Healing Rain in there with that as well, and they do still have that 0-mana Lightning Storm alongside a second one, as you pointed out. But as you said, they're looking for a swing turn, a turn where they can essentially afford to play Saronite Chain Gangs, get them Hellfired, because they will at this point, and just not be dead. And that probably comes from like a 0-mana Lightning Storm plus Volcano plus Saronite Chain Gang turn. Like, that's probably what you're looking for at some point. But this board state is getting to the point where it even resists that.
It's just too much health, right? I was even looking if there's a way you can sort of eke out some extra value through Hagatha plays, like Hagatha, 0-mana Lightning Storm, so on, but the health's just too much and spread across too many minions. There's not just one minion that's got all the health right now.
There is a potentially strong Hagatha setup, though, which Fox is working towards here. Now the 2-1 can go into the 8-5, and then because he can challenge the 7-4 with his own 7-7, and then it's only the 4 damage that he's facing down if he plays the Hagatha. So this works out pretty nicely.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate that he can't get that Hook Retriever to 3. That would have been insane, because then he closed the whole board and he's actually looking like it's setting up lethal. But this is probably as good as it's going to get. Oh, okay. Kind of.
Hey, a Saronite Chain Gang!
Yeah, original Saronite Chain Gang.
Again, I think Lucas there, snapping towards the Blood Reaver Gul'dan. They've probably discussed it in the past and decided that this was going to be the Gul'dan turn. And then someone on his team just went, all right, slow down for a second. No, you're good. All right, play Gul'dan.
It's worth it.
No.
People get carried away. It's like just enough pressure, like 6/6 powers. Okay for a Gul'dan. It's reasonable, as well, especially after seeing some of the Overload and AoE come out last turn.
I think this is a secure turn for the Saronite Chain Gang because you can Healing Rain with it. And then if your opponent Hellfires to push damage through, they're suddenly playing into your second Lightning Storm in the process. I do think the Healing Rain has to happen, though.
Yeah, and also double Saronite Chain Gang. Well, guess what? None of the minions on the other side of the board died Hellfire.
Yes.
All of yours do, so...
And actually, if he'd have gone second Chain Gang there, or any play that didn't involve the Healing Rain, he was actually dead to double Hellfire. He was at 16. The minions pushed 10, the 2 Hellfires pushed 6. And even then, there's the ping on top of that as well. But 28 is looking much more secure.
Yeah, not out of the woods, though.
Getting there. The trees are starting to clear.
Yeah. That's true. We're nearly out of the Witchwood. Trees are starting getting to clear to the Boomsday project, which I don't know whether... Maybe I'll turn around and go back in the woods, by the sounds of it.
Can't wait to play a 1-5 and then coin an Annoyatron on top of it.
Paladin's going to probably be good.
Double Spellstone and push here. I like it. They're preserving the health on the minions instead of using the Hellfire to push through, recognizing again that second Lightning Storm is a huge threat to them if they Hellfire themselves. Same again. We're just pretty much back where we were last turn.
And that's the scary part, right?
There's the drink up. The pieces are assembling for Fox and for Russia. It is a double life drinker list, by the way. I think this is something that we haven't really got into the habit of calling out.
Sure.
Because every list was double life drinker apart from Rage for so long, and then suddenly people started to realize that Rage was right. Hello!
Cheeky.
1 in 31, by the way.
I will say, the pieces are coming together, but the biggest piece isn't there yet. And although there's only 6 cards left, you still need to draw Shudderwock.
You do.
Or you're dead anyway, most of the time.
But 2 of those remaining cards are volcanoes, right? I'm also just going to super double check that there are 2 volcanoes in the deck, although it would be absurd. Yes, there are. So 2 of those cards are volcano, which starts to sweep away this board, and that buys you all the time you need because
it does, but it also takes time from you as well because of the overload.
Sure.
Just means you always need that sort of empty turn to then set up the 9-mana Shudderwock.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure was another design choice in terms of mana cost when we talked about Psychic Scream earlier. If Shudderwock was 8, guess what? You can Volcano and still play it the turn after. What's the setup though? Because Brazil have to be afraid of Volcano. How far do you push this? Is Hellfire correct now and just say, well, if they use Volcano now, the health isn't enough to survive anyway, so it doesn't matter? I want to push all the minions as much as possible.
I think Brazil are more tempted to Hellfire now and push damage because it's the only way they can push damage. And now they think they have damage permanence because the two healing rains are gone, right? And if Shudderwock is drawn, Shudderwock's irrelevant. Like, Shudderwock isn't a healing card, Shudderwock is the game ends card, right? And if anything, the best way to play around Shudderwock is to find a situation where you're threatening lethal after the first Shudderwock turn. That is the last turn you get to play Hearthstone. So that's when you have to be threatening lethal. So it makes pushing damage super, super good. It just so happens that they're going to run into this 3rd randomly generated healing rain, and that quest to push damage is just going to get a little bit sketchier.
Right. I'm trying to... Wow, the triple life drink is actually nuts. I'm thinking if Doom Pack can win the game for them, if Shudderwock doesn't auto-complete. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely can.
Because then you just Doom Pack to be like, we've got no minions
You're out
left,
of things
friend.
now, friend. Yeah.
And I could hero power you for 3 every turn, and guess what? Your hero power doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
I always trying to weigh up the value of the Lich King cards because they are so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to work out what the plan is. Even if you've got in a bad one, so to speak, you could probably still do something worthwhile with it.
Yep. I remember Russia did not find any additional copies of their Saranite Chain Gangs in this game.
So it is what it is.
So they're on a 66%er for the bounce from Shudderwock.
Scary.
It's always weird rounding. I don't know why people say it's 67% if you want to round. I'm as guilty of that as anyone else.
Sure. Yeah. It's because it sounds nicer.
It does.
It's because if you do more than that, then the number goes past 100, right? Is that the issue?
Sure. I don't know.
There's Shudderwock though.
And there's exactly the issue that you called out, which is overload turn into drawing Shudderwock into now they have to find something to do for a turn. And that thing to do probably involves just getting as many cards out of the hand as possible. That's not easy to do, because every minion replaces itself. Primal Talismans is castable. Volcano can't be used because it overloads too much. Feral Spirits can't be used because it overloads too much. Even Lightning Bolt itself, you don't really want to use it because you want to have a full 10-mana Shudderwock turn on the following.
Which is hilarious to say. You're like, oh, you want that 10-mana Shudderwock turn, but it's a 9-mana card. You'll see.
Mexico pulling one back. On the off-stream games, of course, this is a Swiss tournament, so much like you'd be used to seeing at a DreamHack or whatever else, there are a lot of off-stream games happening that you are not too privy to, so we're doing our best to keep you updated. But enough about off-stream. Let's wait and see. There is a chain gang.
That's green to me. There needs to be some kind of Shudderwock theme music for this.
I get Kibler and Natalie on it, they're good at those.
I'll have to give them a call.
God, there's so many life drinkers. They zoned all their life drinkers, and it's just killing him without even ending up bouncing. You can see the decreased power level, I guess, of the Zola bounce compared to the Murmuring Elemental Grumble guaranteed bounce, because now all Fox has ended up with in hand is 2 9-mana Shudderwocks because of the hand space issues that he ran into.
Also, you see the difference of the impact Hagatha makes on the Shudderwocks as well. 6/3s are infinitely easier to clear than 6/6s because most cards and most classes just don't have the ability to deal 6. So
So now we just have to go again, and we're just right back where we were in terms of the same failure rate. But there goes the Saronite again, and now this time he does get the 1-mana Shudderwock, and that will just be game. There is 3 life drinkers minimum inside each of these Shudderwocks, so that is going to lock it up.
It's not often we actually see the full ending of a game like this, I'll be honest, but the triple life drinker just sped this one up a little bit, but also just hitting those success rates is huge, because the second you miss is a very real world in which Russia just miss because you can. It's a built-in percentage to the way the deck is built, and then they probably lose from that point, but they didn't. They got the bounce, and Fox takes the win for Russia in game number 3.
I now know 3 things about Fox. He has pretty nice hair, he has floral wallpaper, and he's pretty good at playing Shudderwock Shaman.
Yeah, he's 100% win rate on stream. That's 4 things.
Sure. Any more?
We might see.
Okay.
I don't think Fox is playing twice in a in this, or potentially playing
it's
twice.
Silver Name that's doubling up for Russia.
Ah, of course. So the next matchup, though, one of your favorite players, it's going to be Perna versus Dachi. It's going to be Warrior versus Paladin, though. In Falcone's word, ouchie.
Yeah, just to double check, make sure we do all the housekeeping. Yes, it is an odd Paladin. What kind of warrior is it going to have to run into, Raven?
Guess.
Is it a quest warrior?
Damn. Any big differences in Militia Commander, which is actually becoming pretty standard, I would say, right now. As a one-off.
50-50, I'd say.
Which is reasonable. It's not a surprise anymore to see the card in the list. Outside of that, it contains your Battle Rage that you like, and 1 Ironbeak Owl. Then the Tarkreeper, Stonehills, the huge. So this is going to be an uphill climb, would be probably putting it very nicely.
It would.
In terms of this matchup, as there are just 2. The deck is taunts and minion removal, especially small minion removal. What do you even do, Sol? Can Udachi do it? That's the question, right?
It's going to be tough, for sure. This is kind of the inverse of exactly what we talked about. You asked me this exact question, right? Like when we were watching Aggro Mage versus Odd Paladin, is this the worst matchup in the game? And I was like, well, you have kind of the inverse where Odd Paladin then runs into a control-style warrior. And it used to be, way back in the day, that even before, Justicar created this idea of making 2 dudes with your hero power, that mid-rangey Paladin decks could do very well against Control Warrior because they just had infinite threats by pressing that 1/1 button, and eventually that damage built up. Well, unfortunately, Warrior now has so many Whirlwind effects, and also a potential hero that gives them infinite whirlwinds that can then answer your infinite 1/1 generation. So they kind of just have you checkmated in that regard.
And on top of that as well, they have a way to win.
End the game.
It's not old Control Warrior of like of back in the day, just won by making you just bored enough to leave. Basically, they gained tons of armor and just only removal. To be completely honest, there was like Garrosh, Grom, as 10 damage sometimes, but that was about it. Whereas now there's actually just Sulfuras in the form of the quest reward, and it just means that if and when they feel comfortable enough, they can start hitting you for 8 once they've felt like they've cleared enough, or maybe they have Warpath left. So, okay, equip Sulfuras, Warpath, 8 to face, let's go.
One thing I am particularly interested about, matchup aside, because we can talk about it more when we get there, but we've kind of painted the picture. It's very unfavorable.
It's pretty hard.
But Udachi in particular is someone that I'm curious to watch in a team format. Because as you set up, he's one of my favorite players. He's someone that I've watched play a lot. He's someone I have a lot of respect for. One of his defining characteristics as a Hearthstone player is how fast he can play and maintain accuracy. And by accuracy, I don't mean not misclicking, but actually making the right plays.
Aiming at face.
Actually making the right plays without seeming to think for 70 seconds about what the right play is. He's just so instinctive, which comes from amassing so many games of Hearthstone, you know, in the region of 60,000 wins now, probably. I'm just extrapolating what his number of wins was the last time I knew the exact number. He's probably somewhere around 60,000 on his account, combined between Constructed and Arena. And having played so many games, he just instinctively understands these situations. And I gave him the nickname of the Hearthstone supercomputer because he just calculates so quick and he plays so quick. Can he slow down without losing his mind? Can he stop and take the full turn on every turn and listen to input from 3 other players?
Do they even want him to, is my question. If I was on that team, I'd be like, look, Stan, you're up. Enjoy, I'm going to go make a drink. You know, because he's an extremely good Hearthstone player.
If you leave Stan to play on his own, you better make that drink real quick.
Right, but what I wouldn't...
Ain't got time to boil the kettle.
I'll be completely honest, what I wouldn't want to do is go the other way and say, you have to play how I want you to play, and that just throws you off because you just don't play the game like that ever. So I would be worried that teamwork, super important, communication, super important, but you can't just be like, oh, you do this because we want you to do this. When you're piloting, he's the one controlling the mouse, he's piloting this deck.
My question would be, you know, conversely on that, is like Standard actually stubborn enough, arrogant enough to be able to say, nah, shut up, just let me play full speed? Because all right, we've even seen him at like championship events, right? Like play very slowly. We've seen situations where, like, I think there was a game that we were casting where he actually roped turn 1, which was just a staggering thing to see.
We had to check it with Stan, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Perna, on the other hand, is one of the names you probably are fairly familiar with. Perna is one of the players who plays in a lot of these broadcast tournaments, specifically South America's, of course, but not only that. So he's maybe not to Stan's level in terms of achievements and probably number of victories, because who is on ladder, you know, in terms of account victories.
Ladder, right.
Yeah, right, account victories, sorry. But, you know, who is, but definitely no one to mess around with. And again, if you ever needed a handicap to play against Stan, having a dramatically favored matchup is fine by me.
Sure. That's a huge card. If you're going to have any chance,
7 mana, yep.
If you're going to have any chance, you need to, you know, strap that bad boy and just go start wailing on the face. Standard actually already considering options. It's not a given that you're just going to play Firefly on 1, because coin hero power into hero power is viable. It's something that starts to threaten a lot of damage with Raid Leader very early, if not force out a very early warpath from the opponent.
Right, and if they warpath in once, great. You know, like the warpath was a 2-mana whirlwind instead of, you know, an X mana decimate your whole board no matter its health most of the time in this deck. So it's a small victory in itself. I would say Bloodraiser is the dramatic fear right now for Stan this early in the game.
Okay, Stan is slowing down. That's the answer to the question.
And you can see his mouth moving, and he's talking to his teammates.
So yeah, that solves the equation for you. He's definitely not going to be left to play at his natural pace. He's going to listen to the input, and this is kind of the point that I was trying to lead towards, but you know, the game started and interrupted our thought process.
How dare it?
I don't think it negatively impacts him to slow down. Okay. Like, that's the problem. I don't think like there's any such thing as like rhythm or momentum in Hearthstone that you kind of get into. I think that whole idea is kind of overblown. I think Standard actually just plays at a pace that he's comfortable with, but he has no issue playing slower.
I will say, if there's a moment you consider taking it slow and having heavy discussions, it's in a matchup where you need to play flawlessly to win, because it's so difficult as the Paladin. So, especially in this one, it's not too much of a surprise. The Acolyte of Pain is going to be pretty nice to just, you know, slam on the board, as there's not too many punishes available for Brazil and the Acolyte, because there's so many just increments of 1 damage available on the board for Paladin, and outside of Arcus Veteran and War Leader combined, there's not really a lot you can do, and that's not going to be doable this turn anyway.
It does come back to the coin usage on the previous turn, though, because for the sake of getting 1 extra damage on board, they lock themselves out potentially of being able to cleanly deal with an Acolyte of Pain on this turn, because, you know, Raid Leader coin Acarus Veteran was a possibility that they threw away when they used the coin. Of course, Acarus Veteran was the draw this turn, which makes that a very small consideration when you consider those plays. But Acolyte drawing a single card, of course, just increases your odds as the Paladin player that the Warrior doesn't find the Warpaths, doesn't find the Blood Razors, doesn't find the Brawls, doesn't get what it needs to be able to infinitely answer your infinite 1/1.
Right. And they probably talked about how they deal with this Acolyte. It looks like they're going to trade double into it. And that might be more of a nod to Corridor Creeper, but I was weighing up, honestly, and I'm no expert in this matchup, but especially as the Paladin, but I would weigh up, do you just slam everything to face and just get the most damage you think you're going to get at this point? The Acolyte isn't one-shottable, so to speak, so do you just ignore it? Because they gave him 2 instead of a potential 3. What's that worth?
It's stronger against, say, Warpath from the opponent there. Like, you could Warpath twice on 4 mana and just keep a 1/1 Acolyte on the board that can hang around for the next turn. It's also stronger against Battle Rage to take it off the board. So there are definitely upsides of keeping the Acolyte's draws down to 2, because there were ways that Brazil could engineer more than that. And it is a matchup where you're going to need to stifle card draw. That's a big way that you find the small percentage that you are going to win, which is you just say, hey, you don't draw that many cards naturally in your deck, Quest Warrior, so I'm just going to hope that you don't draw enough to find the AoEs that you need.
Available options here for Russia is they do have Blessing of Might and Arcus Veteran, which go hand in hand to, you could Blessing of Might the Protector, Arcus Veteran, the Firefly, get the trades onto the Sirenet Chain Gangs, push for a bit of damage with the Raid Leader, and still press that button. So won't be too bad. Or they would actually have an option of playing the Corridor Creeper as well, maybe to just get that sort of 2/5 on the board as something that is going to try and outlast those Warpaths.
It's Brawl's turn though, that's the scary part. I think Corridor Creeper was really something that you need to test for a Brawl first and have some kind of read on afterwards. So yeah, no great surprise to see them going with a board that's still very brawlable, but a board that they'd be happy to see brawled, I imagine.
Right. Hold on to the Blessed of Might as well. Didn't need to kill the Chain Gang number 2. It's obviously in a perfect world, you don't want Blessed of Might or the Arcus Veteran buffs to just be used to just kill 1 minion and then pass.
Yes.
You really want them to push as much damage to face as humanly possible. Or orcishly possible, elfishly possible. Any of the races in Azeroth.
This is an all-inclusive Hearthstone cast.
100%. Tarim is nice as well. I don't need to go too deep into it. Tarim's always been nice for just over a year now. But in this matchup, Tarim's, you'll gain it from Stonehill is maybe an extra push that helps you push some extra damage that wasn't normally allowed in the list. Also, none of these are that great.
They're fine, honestly. It's very different in this matchup because, of course, you throw away the quest first things first, right? So the Stonehill Defender dynamic in the matchup is so different from what you're used to seeing with Quest Warrior. These days with Quest Warrior, you see Stonehill Defender get played and you see a cheap taunt get taken if it's available.
Right.
It fills in the mana curve, it gets them to quest completion faster. Now, because you're not trying to complete the quest, you're just trying to dominate the board, remove your opponent's stuff with Whirlwind effects and Brawls, and then afterwards just get anything to lock the game out. And honestly, Tarlord is a pretty great minion to drop at the end of the game to just lock it out.
That's true. And this another thing that just feels awkward as the Paladin is, guess what? Your deck goes wide every turn. And then there's just the Dry Gulch Whisker, and it's just... Right, okay, I have to just do all this work all over again.
Yep.
Like this whole turn, and he's still not cleared the armor. And he has to get that beefed up a little bit. Tarim is there, as I said, and the Raid Leader will go on top of Tarim. It's a live effect, not, battle cries, so they will actually become, in a lot of instances, or in all instances, should I say, 4/4s.
Do you want to take a trip to Firebat World, Raven? Firebat World coming soon?
I actually
to a
enjoyed
resort near you?
I actually enjoy Firebat World.
Because now that Brazil, of course, have thrown away the quest, and because there's very little card draw in either deck, and because there's kind of infinite value that runs up against infinite removal, One of the small ways that you can potentially like lay out to win this matchup with the Paladin is, of course, fatigue. If you do completely end up bailing out of that aggressive plan, you can just start trading through everything that they have to throw at you. And depending on where that quest has ended up in their deck and how late they can end up drawing it, they might not have enough resources left at the end to be able to complete the quest after they draw it. That's much, much more unlikely now than it was in the past, because now there's Stonehill Defenders and there's Phantom Militia that are just so many taunts in a single card that you're able to complete it with less individual cards than you were before. But it's still a possibility that you have to keep in mind. So I'll be looking out for signs that maybe Russia will be leaning towards that at any point in this matchup.
And if there's a moment you consider it, it's the moment you've seen Phantom Militia just played, right? There's one gone. So that's one less high impact resource that they can reuse.
But what I will just want to clarify is it will very much be a plan B, right? If they
do not want to do that.
If they switch to that plan, it's because they're scrapping for the tiniest percent that they might win. Their plan A is be aggressive and end the game and hope that the removal isn't there.
Yeah, and that plan A is looking okay as they made a big push this turn with the help, of course, of Tarim. Got nice as well, like sort of value trade with the Stonehill before it got debuffed, kind of buffed overall, which was pretty nice. There is Brawl in hand now, though, for Brazil. The one thing that's kind of positive here is because of Tarim, is it just a permanent effect? Whichever minion survives just isn't terrible. It's a 3/3 at worst, which is, it's not good, but it's way better than normal. And that's because Perna's not been able to have something on the board to keep that. He did get just a dude, but it does mean it is also open to level up to create a 5/5 next turn.
Yes, it is. Woo. And there is no more mass removal in hand for Brazil at this point.
Vine Cleaver as well on curve. Sets up for a big level up turn going forward.
Just pushes 7.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the minion that survived just guarantee being at worst a 3/3. Imagine if Tarim lived.
Yeah.
I find it hard not to want to Vine Cleaver on curve here, but obviously Team Russia just considering every possibility. And I think it's between just Hero Power level up and Vine Cleaver right now. I don't see tons of thought of going into Stonehill and Arcus Veteran. You don't really want to waste time doing minions that, creating minions that aren't going to heavily impact the immediate outcome of the game.
I would have loved to listen to the discussions that turn because, yeah, ending up with the...
You wouldn't have understood a word.
No, it's very true, okay. I would have loved to have some magical chip in my ear that translates every language of the globe and listen to that conversation last turn, because I'm with you. Vine Cleaver was just very appealing. It's not even like you're playing against a weapon destruction deck, for example. There's nothing in there. There's no ooze, there's no gluttonous ooze, there's no way to deal with it. So it kind of almost banks you it banks you a level up of almost exactly this size at a minimum for the next 3 turns, right? Because you can Vine Cleaver, you can pressure Hero Power, and you can level up. You can swing your Vine Cleaver, you can pressure Hero Power, and you can level up on any given turn. So the only thing this did on top of that is just push extra damage because they had essentially a recruit with charge live on the board.
But only 2. Vine Cleaver does 4, Sol.
But Vine Cleaver always does 4. Vine Cleaver always does 12.
Yeah, okay.
The level up can be in a position where it pushes 0 damage.
That is true.
Defend the gates.
I love this card.
I hate that accent.
I'd need to actually listen to it properly again.
It just sounds like someone doing a very bad impression.
Oh, she's Gilnean, right?
Is she?
Yeah, Gilneans are
fake British
Londoners,
people? Okay.
Effectively.
Sure. It sounds like Admirable trying to do a British accent.
Top hat, kind of.
Gotcha.
Era. So yeah.
Law with Raven, it's Law with Raven.
Next time on Law with Raven. I mean, I'm happy to do that show, to be completely honest. If anyone wants me to do it, just let me know. And look at this, we're kind of joking around for a second there, but this is what you need to do. Take the notes, I think, for this game. I'm not saying Russia's won right now. They're in a good position, of course. Vine Cleaver being available as and when you can use it is fantastic. But overall, they are doing the job they need to do right now. Also, no warpaths. That's a bit of a big deal too. And the Tarim, massive help. Guess what? You need help in this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay to ask for help.
Right. you said it's a lesson on what to do in this matchup, and it's shut your eyes, play well, and hope everything goes your way. Right? Like Stonehill Defender picking up Tarim, your opponent only drawing one AoE effect out of the multiples that they have in their deck. But now that Scourge Garrosh pickup can potentially be a big deal in the coming turns, because as I said, that's what gives then Brazil access to the infinite whirlwinds that they need to take care of the infinite 1/1s.
The nice one, the nice thing I will say initially is the higher damage minions are on the taunt, which means the weapon swing of Garrosh is actually pretty scary.
Yes.
For the warrior, as in they take the most damage.
Oh, the Leroy pickup. It's getting close, Raven. There is 1, 2, 6 to go into one of them,
So
and then
4
1,
this
2,
turn?
5. See, it's only a couple of turns away here from that Leroy connecting, but of course, you know you're dealing with Quest Warrior, with Taunt Warrior. Even if they've thrown away that quest, they still are going to be playing a Taunt minion into you on any given turn.
So they can make the trades. They probably, so what they're working out now is how do they swing these taunts? Do they want to put them to 1? That's one thing they'll be considering right now. My only worry is if Warpath happens and they're dead anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I'm looking at Baku this turn as well. Just put one big boy on the board.
You haven't seen any large removal though, right? Okay, like what's in your opponent's hand? Because you haven't seen them Warpath you, they haven't used Second Brawl, so it's none of that nonsense. So there has to be like an Execute or a Shield Slam or something in there that's going to be able to tempo swing back if you spend like 9 mana on Baku.
My only point is how they proc the Execute. Because if they have whirlwind effect, well, guess what? You're in trouble anyway. It doesn't matter. Still gone with the Stonehill instead. Did get Phantom Militia, which, again, maybe looks weird playing against the Taunt Warrior, but that's just 3 minions.
Yeah.
Which are going to help push damage, and every point of damage is super important the second this Grommash gets played, because guess what? You get an amazing hero power, but you can't generate any more armor from your hero power this game.
Right.
And we've already seen one Dragos.
Boom. Goodbye minions, goodbye minions. And now is the point where the warrior will start to take control of this game, because look at what Russia have to generate back into this. The answer is not a great deal, apart from that Phantom Militia that they picked up.
Yeah, and they can tactically place the taunts as well. It isn't like Saranac Chain Gang, so you can actually place the taunts that help negate the weapon power.
It's almost always entirely pointless though, because they can, you're placing them around 1/1s, right? So then they just press the whirlwind first, kills all the 1/1s, all the taunts compress together, and then they hit with the weapon at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta think about these things though.
Yes, you do. You do have an Argent Squire in your hand, and you do have a 1/2 in your hand, so you can at least think about that, right? Because those are minions that don't die to that whirlwind effect from the hero power. Those you can use to space out the bigger threats.
I must move quickly.
I will silence their scream.
Or you can just play a large gentleman instead.
I think by the sounds of it, Baku might actually be female. I don't know why you're looking at the image in the studio to try and tell. It's a giant snake.
Looks kind of feminine. I don't know.
Are you saying what a feminine creature should look like, Saul?
Not at all. Just saying my initial impressions. Okay. What Baku chooses to identify as is none of my business.
That's extremely true. Is the quest important now?
In what regards?
Is it ever going to be? You were talking earlier about when that quest is drawn has an impact on whether the warrior can finish the game.
Yes.
Are we even going to get to that point based on what we've got left?
Possibly, yes. We live in a world now where Perna just has a couple of very low impact threats in hand. Tar Creeper aren't going to end the game anytime soon. Tar Lord, same thing. If there is like one bigger threat that comes down, you know, Russia can potentially just Leroy and trade into it if they want to set out for the fatigue to stall out. So yeah, the fact there's still 13 cards left and one of those is a Phantom Militia is very good news. So in answer to your question, yes, the quest is still important at this point. Only slightly, but it's relevant. It shuts another door for Russia that they might have been looking to walk through at some point.
Yep. And Shine actually might be able to open up a window here instead because he has the level up, and the weapon swing and the hero power. And guess what? 3/3s don't die to the hero power from Brazil alone. And they have to, I think they have to go for it and then just cross their fingers. Please no warpath. Please no warpath.
The weapons there, though, you lose so much value immediately. You're making 4 3/3s and 3 of them just die to the weapon on the spot.
Right, but are you living in a world where that's ever getting better or improving? Because Brazil will not swing
really.
that weapon at face until they have lethal, like, or they're killing minions. So I think, unfortunately, it has to go there, and they're only on 16.
Yeah. And actually, now that I look at it, yeah, I do like this. I'm forgetting about the Flame Elemental, which you do have there for a bit of disruption. Means that now the weapon only kills 2 of the 3/3s and not 3 as I initially suggested.
And there's 13 available after the swing, if the swing is the only thing that happens.
Yeah. But there is also a Dry Whisker armor that has just been picked up. And that is bad news for Stanidaci and for Russia.
And that might look like, any card off the top that turn that is very relevant seems fortunate, but let's just remind everyone there are 2 warpaths still in the deck, which would have probably cleaned this game up a long time ago.
Yeah, there are 2 warpaths. There's a second brawl, and there's 2 blood razors as well.
That's
that we
true.
just
Yeah,
haven't
we've not seen blood razors.
Like, look at how badly this draw has gone for the Warrior, and they've still stabilized. That just kind of gives you this matchup in a nutshell.
There'd have to have been a no Garrosh draw,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
For this
They
to end.
drew Garrosh. It was like the one good card they drew, and it was plenty.
Still one more swing of that weapon as well. Shadow Mourn, I believe it is, crafted from the shards of Frostmourne, which you may see from the Lich King card itself, the Weapon of Arthas.
Law with Raven, it's Law with Raven.
1 episode a game.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to start making some notes on that now as well.
Well,
no good way to get to. Tar Creeper is still so over a year down the line, and Tar Creeper is still a fantastic card and has been consistently since it came into the game.
yeah.
5 health is really good.
Now, bear with me. What if you could play a 5 health minion as a neutral on turn 2?
That gets strong buffs based on
And then
tribe,
put pants on it.
and maybe a very large glove.
Yeah,
Oh no, the large glove's already on it in the picture.
exactly.
I must move quickly.
Oh, looks like Mexico fighting back on the one of the off matches versus Greece. That started off as 2-0 ahead for Greece, but that might change pretty quickly. We'll keep you updated as soon as we know. And I think just getting back to that turn, Leroy was honestly, in my view, the only real choice there.
Yeah.
But it just, I feel like it doesn't really matter now. Blood Razor equipped, that's 2 Whirlwind effects on demand because of the hero power as well. The Phantom Militia, 3/2/4 taunts. All of these minions die this turn. And a Tarlord's in the way. Does Tarlord hit the board hard enough to make the Russian Federation concede? Is my question.
It's a good question. They may have kept perfect track of the cards that are remaining. I think if Tarlord hits the board, locks them out, and they know there are enough taunt minions left to finish the quest, then yes, that is a 0% win position from where they are. So I wouldn't be surprised in that case. I personally don't know exactly which taunt minions that Brazil have left in their deck, but with that Phantom Militia being 3 and that Tarlord being 1, they only need 1 of these last 10 cards remaining to be a taunt minion.
Fairly likely, I would say.
And yeah, I believe there is at least 1 Saronite Chain Gang that we have remained to be seen in the matchups. Yeah, I think they're good.
I can translate for Stanidaci if you want.
Okay.
Why are they taking so long to decide where this whelp is going? It's just a 1-2 or its face.
It's actually kind of a big decision, though, because it's the difference between playing hero power or using the weapon swing, right? Like, the way they did it, they used a weapon swing so they could spend 9 mana on Phantom Militia.
Yep.
The other way round, they send the 1/1 into the 1/2, they press hero power, they keep their weapon, but they don't get to play the Phantom Militia. So Yeah, it's actually kind of a big decision. As far as the context of big decisions left in this game goes, that was a pretty big one.
Which, believe it or not, is why I brought it up.
Yeah.
I was not being a serious translator there.
Ah, hey, Blood Racer. And then Brawl off the top, back to back. Those are some good cards for the matchup. Perna just wanted to play on hard mode.
And just still be like, yeah, we got this.
Like, against Danadachi, no AoE, no whirlwinds, nothing until Garrosh on turn 9. Easy.
I will say, I am excited for what weeks going forward of this format will look like, because it's a really tough one. I'm not, super great at sort of breaking formats, so to speak, but we've seen a lot of Warrior, right? It's just the Warrior deck people are playing. No one's banning it.
I think it's really bad though in the format. I think it's really badly positioned. Obviously, it sounds really dumb for me to say that based on what we're currently
Warrior's
watching.
terrible luck,
right? But like, look at all the other decks that we're seeing be first picked from other people. We're seeing, Malagos Druids, Shadowwalk Shamans, Recruit Hunters, Death Rattle Hunters, and then even the other control decks that are left up in the format are more greedy than Quest Warrior a lot of the time, right? So I actually think Quest Warrior ends up being really badly positioned in the remaining format.
Okay, we can have a deeper discussion at the weekend, I think, about
Sure.
this, because honestly, because I want to see the evolution of decks go through, because I don't think you can bring the same stuff every week.
Oh, I completely agree.
I cannot
Even
see
for
it.
the 3 weeks we have until the expansion shatters everything
Of
and
course.
just turns it all upside down, I don't think we'll see the same thing over and over.
Even Paladin next week, guys.
Hey, people brought it to Italy, right?
People finished quite high legend recently with it, actually.
Finished High Legend with it?
Oh, sorry, hit high legend. Deep in the season, though.
Okay.
Like last 3-4 days, like top 10.
Still a perfectly fine deck, honestly.
That's the thing with even Paladin, right? It was the hero power buff is of course great, but also just a lot of the even cards in Paladin
Just
are
play
really
all the
good.
good Paladin
Yeah, they're
cards,
just
yeah.
the good cards.
Yeah.
Whereas, when you look at cards like Arcus Veteran, even Blessing of Might to a large extent, they are not good cards in a vacuum, right?
You wanted to point out a bad card in Stanodachi's hand, and you named all of them except Raid Leader.
So I didn't just get to the point where I just name all of the cards I can see. See what you see.
If you wanted to pick the perfect example of a bad card that is in a deck now because we're post-rotation and you have to play all odd cards, like Raid Leader is the emblem for what you were trying to say, and you just named the
Stormwind
other
Champion.
Yeah, right.
That's better.
2 perfectly functional Hearthstone cards and a Raid Leader walk into a bar.
Yep.
How long can this go on?
That's Saranite. I was like, where's the other one? You stayed in the bar.
Yeah.
How long can
And that is going to be the end of that.
Yeah, I don't really know a world which they can keep up with now. This sounds really bad, but even if the hero power hits a 1-1 every turn, it's still going to be good enough at that point just to reduce the potential pressure through that Tar Lord. It's not going to happen. The Perna for Brazil take the win. And that means it's going to be 2-2 for Brazil versus Russian Federation. And again, we've talked about this a lot in the past couple of days, but if you take these early wins in Swiss, you're in a great position. A loss early is normally not great for tiebreakers, but taking down the big names of the high-performing teams, right, and with some of the highest-performing players in the world, that is just great feeling. Shove them down so you're not dealing with them in the next round, right? You can face someone else. Look at Norway as an example. USA, for example.
And actually, the early loss or the early win is kind of less important in the format that we have because the cut is actually very clean at the end. So tiebreakers are not going to come into it so much. Therefore, an early loss or an early win is just is what it is. It's one of the wins that you're trying to get, or it's one of the losses that you're trying to avoid. And hey, if anything, if you want to get really blue sky thinking about it, an early loss then means you're in an easier bracket later on, technically, of other teams that have lost. But, we see USA and Norway down there already. So I highly advise you don't fall into those shark-infested waters.
Right, and let's be honest, we discussed this a lot when there was the public feedback on our caster predictions. Where is this team? Where is that team? there's a lot of good teams in this tournament, and even the teams you might not think are that good are probably pretty good. So that we could have picked multiple teams, way more than 2 each, and still had, you know, legitimate claims, I would say, for, say, getting top 8, you know, making it to the grand finals, which is the stage 3 of the tournament. So there are a ton of great players here, and both these teams have some great players. And I believe we can check out what the next matchup is going to be in terms of classes, because I'm not going to lie to anyone, I forgot. I knew it was Silvername and Race, I just couldn't remember the classes. It's going to be Race on the Shaman and Silvername on the Warrior. Any crazy differences with these decks? Since you are now the keeper of the deck list?
I am now the keeper of the deck list, yes. The Shaman is pretty much standard to what we saw before. Zola again, Mind Control Tech again, no Hemit again. So it's very, very similar to what we saw last time around.
Stamped.
From Shadowwalk Shaman, yes indeed.
Okay, well, while the players get ready and set up for the final game of this series, you can go and grab a drink, maybe grab a couple of biscuits and get comfortable for the next game. We're going to be right back. Is the last game of this series, and it's going to be Race versus Silvername. But before we get too deep into it, we have a public service announcement. What is it, Sal?
Yeah, I just want to issue a correction. We erroneously said that it was pronounced Neves earlier. Someone contacted us to let us know that it is Neves, of course. One of the purposes of the Hearthstone Global Games is to give full exposure to all these players that don't necessarily get all their camera time. So the least we can do is to get their names right. So it is Neves, as in 7 backwards, or as in never, whichever way you want to look at it. Neves, not Neves. Okay,
well, let's get back into it once we've sorted that out. And like I said, it's going to be Race versus Silvername on the Shaman as well. So we cut it short a little bit, but let's go a little bit deeper into the matchup. What do you make of this last game? Who do you think is going to end up on top here?
So the Shadowwalk Shaman is going to be coming out from Brazil versus the Warrior from Silvername, and from Russia, the Warrior, again, as we've been seeing throughout, is the Taunt Warrior, and it's a pretty similar looking list as you would expect. There's not that much wiggle room in Warrior these days. There is a Harrison in there, which wasn't around in the opposing deck list when we saw it from Warrior, and I don't believe, no, there is no Battle Rage in this case instead, so there's kind of your like-for-like replacement. But, in this is the kind of scenario, it's the kind of matchup that we've talked about several times over the course. I've brought it up, and then Lorinda has referenced it. It's the kind of late-game race scenario where it's 2 decks that really don't do anything in terms of pressure. They don't do anything in terms of pushing tempo. All of their minions are very low impact in terms of the damage that ramps up on board, but what they're trying to do is dig through their deck and find those activators, and it's the kind of matchup where a Battle Rage can come in very useful for the Quest Warrior, because a lot of the time you're going to get a board state which is like my 2 4s and 2 3s versus your Saronite, Chain Gang, and Life Drink.
Right.
At which point you can just go trade, Battle Rage, draw 5 cards, and that can almost be game ending in that position, and let alone the natural synergy that you have with your Blood Razors, with your Warpaths, and so on. So that not being in the deck for Silvername could potentially come back to bite Russia.
I will say, though, I do think the Quest Warrior has, due to its looser restrictions on getting to its win condition, they need to play Taunts, whereas Shadowwalk needs to play Life Drinker, play Saronite Chain Gang, get the Grumble effect, get the Zola effect if that's the case, then play Shadowwalk and hope it works. That's way more difficult to do in general than playing 7 Taunts for a Taunt Warrior.
Yes.
So I think there's a little bit of an opening there for Silvername to just rush this down and just say, look, you can heal for a lot with Healing Rain, but I can also do 8 damage a turn for 2 mana. How do you deal with that?
Right, but that is a little bit where the scales start to swing back as well, because when the Warrior completes their quest, the game doesn't end. Right?
Yes,
there is still 2, 3, 4, maybe more turns afterwards where Shaman can stick stuff to the board, stop hero powers connecting with face, heal up with Healing Rain twice to get out of range again, and in that time they use those extra turns to finish, quote, their quest of completing their Shadowwalk, then the game ends.
Yep. I will say as well, it's quite difficult to manage the healing plus the activators for the Shadowwalk as well.
Sure.
That's something that is, if you mismanage that, you can just die, or just as bad to some extent, just be in the same position as the previous turn, so you've not really gained anything except 1 card draw, I guess, which is something. But we're going to kick it off with a Cornered Sentry just on 2. We see this much more commonly in the control matchups, because who cares about the 1/1s? They're just going to die. There's no Flame Tongue in this deck. The minions are going to die, and you want to just get that quest going as soon as possible.
So the immediate play here that leaps out to me is trade with your nice little Raptors, and then drop Acolyte of Pain as opposed to Manatide Totem. This surprises me, because you have the biggest threat from the opponent here in terms of interacting with your turn 3 card draw minion is Coin Bloodraiser. And Acolyte of Pain interacts a lot better with Coin Bloodraiser than the Manatide Totem does. There is the result, by the way, of that game that we've been following of the off-stream matches. Greece picking up the 3-2 victory over Mexico.
Yeah, definitely want to go back and watch the VOD of that as well, because that must have been a bit worrying for Greece. Based, I don't know what the matchups were, of course, but based on you go 2-0 up, then you 2-1, then you 2-2. You're like, oh my, we're not going to lose this last game, and just sort of not throw it away, but just throw all that hard work. So that'll be a cool one to watch.
And if you do want to catch up on any of the off-stream matchups, they will all be posted within a very short time period on the Hearthstone Esports YouTube channel that you can go and catch up. So if your country was not featured on stream in any given week and you feel like you've missed out on the action, don't worry, you can always go to YouTube and check it out.
Yeah, which I'm very much looking forward to. Definitely one of the benefits of doing Swiss. We don't get to show everyone on stream, but we do get to show everyone. There's the Owl coming down on the Manatide. Going to slow down at this cycle, but it does mean as well that the Acolytes have a slightly bigger chance at getting new card draws off, just because, yeah, Manatide's going to be one a turn, but Acolyte can be normally as an average of 2.
Yeah, and maybe that was the concern with why they went Manatide Totem instead of Acolyte of Pain, because the Ironbeak Owl on curve, of course, means Acolyte of Pain draws 0 cards, whereas Manatide Totem draws 1 if you play it and it then immediately gets owled. So now having the Manatide get owled means that this Acolyte of Pain interacts in the exact same way as it did on the previous turn with the Bloodraiser setup. So there hasn't really been any kind of punish on the sequencing from Brazil.
Russia now have to just work out what they want to do because of this Acolyte. I don't have any strong disagreements with just dropping Chain Gang and saying, right, whatever, I'm just going to get to this quest. You are going to draw 2 cards from Acolyte, but fine, it happens. You can't always just 100% deal with Acolyte every single time you see it played.
Yeah.
These Bloodraisers are a little bit weird though now, right? As the game continues, Bloodraiser's power kind of just dwindles, as you're not negating things like the Manatide as directly. You're not killing it off in one swing. A lot of the time I see from Bloodraiser right now is just extra damage and maybe to take down Saranites a little bit easier.
Chooses to leave the spell damage totem on board, which leaves them a little vulnerable to Lightning Storm, just with the state of the board that they're looking at. But I believe if they take that off the board, then they'd be looking at, what is it remaining in play, 16 total health, which then is a misery for Volcano, because there's an Acolyte of Pain on the board already. It would be 17, actually, because the Owl would still survive. So there would be a chance that the Acolyte didn't pick up too many card draws, but it would still be a very worrying situation.
Okay, well, mind control tech there, taking the Chain Gang. Probably the best steal, right? Just in case Grumble is drawn next turn and in some world the Saranite doesn't die.
Sure.
If you have to pick one, right?
It's the best steal because it's a 2-3 with Taunt, which is the best minion on the board.
So was Common Sentry before the attack.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay. So yeah, it'd be it's marginally better to get the Saranite Chain Gang, yeah.
I love matchups like this because we really go in on what's the 0.1% chance better.
Yeah, sure.
It's just funny more than anything. Clear what's going to happen, and leaving these tokens on board, or totems, more accurately, is actually important. When it gets to things like Grumble, look at this hand now when you Grumble, like something breaks or there's too many things on the board for when Shudderwock comes down and the Grumble effect happens, which then means you could miss the Shudderwock, not because it didn't bounce, but because it broke, because you can only hold 10 cards. It's actually a big deal, this.
Yeah, and it doubles down on difficulty, because one of the easiest ways to nuke your own board of a bunch of nonsense that you don't want anymore is to play Hagatha. But then by playing Hagatha, which AoEs your own totems away off your board, you then just reset that's the same situation, because every minion you play after that just puts a spell in your hand that might even end up being uncastable. But you can say goodbye to this spell damage totem at least, because they're off the death rattle, it's going to get rid of it, and now there is just that one silence mana tide in play that needs to be worried about. So not too bad.
The cards in hand get the quest done. It's just when, since there is what? Hang on, 7? Is that 3? Yeah, 7 taunts. Maybe even more if they got more Phantom Lashes.
Our vigil shall never end.
It's going to go for double Phantom Lashes this turn. Still the Stonehill, sorry, in hand. They can then probably just going to pick the smallest taunts possible, just try and cram them in as quickly. That's 4 out of 7 currently on the quest. 3 more left to go. 2 are in hand at minimum. And then, yeah, like I said, the small minions are going to pick it up pretty quick. But Brazil now is starting to piece together everything they need. Even the shard's actually not too terrible. If maybe to lock out some weapon swings later on. But these Saranites need to start hitting the board, in my opinion. You don't want to get locked into just delayed turns. It's like you've got Saranite, kind of play it like Warrior and just drop one, especially if you have the 2 in hand.
Yeah, there is, of course, the consideration that I was talking about when we had the reverse Shudderwock matchup, where you kind of want a Saranite on the board in a situation where sometimes you then get to make more copies of it on the following turn, because it reduces your eventual failure rate at the end of the game to play more Saranites over the course.
Right, and I think the big reason is you have 2, right, in hand, so you can afford to just drop one, get it live, it's done. That's 4 mana used now instead of having to use 4 mana way later.
Yeah.
What we probably won't see played this game, if it continues in this fashion, is the Acolyte of Pain in Race's hand. Just because there's already been a lot of card draw, and I guess unless this Mana Tide gets cleaned up, which looks a little bit difficult to do for now.
Yeah, I think if the Acolyte, if the Mana Tide goes down, then this hand's actually quite easy to feed out by Brazil, right? It's like Earth Shock, Healing Rain, Glacial Shard. These are really cheap cards that they can just throw out. So it should be fairly straightforward for them to be able to empty their hand and then be okay playing the Acolyte of Pain. But it is, you're right to point it out because it's a real worry against a deck that's capable of casting Whirlwind effect, right? You know, if you ever get into a situation where you're playing Acolyte of Pain and it's even theoretically possible that your Grumble or your Shudderwock of Pain just get burned, it's something that you have to think about at least. I'm not going to say just don't, because sometimes you might be losing the race and need to take that risk, but it's definitely something that you have to keep in mind.
How long can this go on?
Okay, nothing fancy doable with these Saranite chain gangs, so just going to get them dropped on the board for Race and for Team Brazil, and just get these cooking basically. They still need the Life Drinker, I believe, and there's the one Glacial Shard as well, which is important even late game to lock out any sort of reverse swing minions, swings from Sulfura, swings from the Death Knight weapon.
Yeah, and they also still need Grumble or Zola at minimum, ideally both.
And this happens with Shudderwock. You have to be prepared for, because you need, 3, well, you need like 2, 3 out of 4 key cards a lot of the time. You can play the Shudderwock without Zola if you have to, for example, but you need a lot of pieces. It isn't like, oh, I just need to draw this Death Knight, or I just need to draw this card. It's like, no, I need to draw like 4 or 5 of these cards, play them, and then hope it works. And that's a big ask when your opponent is also doing similar, but in a way faster fashion.
Yeah, and this is a single Life Drinker as well from Brazil. So that is, a 1 card that they have to find, and it's going to be difficult for them to go off without that Life Drinker in there. They can,
against Warrior.
Against Warrior in particular, yeah. They can potentially get stuck in a spot where they just have to rely on making boards of Shudderwocks every single turn, and just hope that there's eventually a whiff where the Warrior can't clear them. But yeah, they're going to have to assembling almost all of the combo. You don't have to assemble all of it. As a wise man named Meatloaf once said, don't be sad, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I actually did not really know where you were going with that, but then I came all the way back round.
As a wise man named Meatloaf once said, like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone till the morning comes.
It's like...
It's cold and lonely in the deep dark night, and I can see paradise by the dashboard light.
Lyrics with song. Which is probably something you'd quite enjoy, to be honest.
There's your boy. Shudderwock is picked up. But
Doesn't matter though, does it, for now?
exactly. Brazil is still several combo pieces short. No Grumble, no Zola, no Life Drinker. All of those cards one-offs in this remaining 12-card deck.
I'm going to ask you a lore question.
Oh, no.
No, you should know, because this is one I've 100% asked you before.
Okay.
Sophioris.
Uh-huh.
Where's it from? Whose weapon is it?
Ragnaros.
Right, okay, cool. That'll do.
Okay.
Do you know its full title?
No.
Sophioris, Hand of Ragnaros.
Okay. Wait, is it his weapon or his hand? Which is it?
I'm just telling you what the card's called.
I
Not what the card's called, what the
deal
weapon
with
is
these
called.
inconsistencies in this lore you're feeding me, Raven. You can't tell me it's his weapon and then tell me it's his hand 3 seconds later.
It's called Hand of Ragnaros. I believe that's the name of the item in World of Warcraft. I'm 99%.
All right, fine.
Although-
I'm going to ask you a lore question about meatloaf.
The food or the...
Either. Choose.
Go. The answer is, I don't know.
Pain, speak to me.
Not being able to swing the weapon is actually pretty annoying right now.
It's a nice tidy turn with the Blood Razor Death Rattle and the Acolyte of Pain on board, though, and as well it takes care of the 2-1, which leaves better targets now for this this rag shot. And boom goes the Manatide Totem, which I'm sure Race was very eager to hold on to there. So it's helping him dig his way through.
It's just not Grumble again, is it? You know, not Grumble, not Life Drinker. I think Brazil is starting to, or should be starting to feel a little bit afraid. They're going to feel the heat of the fire. These balls that Russia are throwing at them if you're going to talk about Falcon.
You can't play that game and then just break out laughing yourself
It was
when you
because
do it.
I was ready for it.
The rules,
I was ready for it. Then I relived the moment that quote's from.
Okay.
And yeah, I handled it a lot better now than I did when it happened, put it that way.
It's true. There's Zola, okay. Piecing together.
Okay. Grumble's the important one, though. Zola, you can kind of do without a little bit more than Grumble, I would say, because you want the 1-mana Shudderwock, right?
Sure.
Versus the, okay, I've played a 9-mana Shudderwock. I have another 9-mana Shudderwock to try again the turn after.
Yeah. But it's a nice time to pick it up as a last chance saloon, because it's the last turn that you were going to have a Saronite Chain Gang on the board. So now you're going to push up your bounce odds from 66.66 to 75% with the 3rd copy of the Chain Gang.
Execute on the Acolyte. I don't know about you, Saul, but I like it. Probably frustrating for Russia at the moment that they don't have any way to just clear the board. Like, why shouldn't they be allowed a way to clear the board if it's a 1 health, a 2 health, and a 2 health minion, right? It's something the deck does. But I do agree with this execute. You've not seen Grumble yet. If you've not seen Grumble, it often means they don't have it.
But this is exactly what I talked about, you know, when we were introing the matchup turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, is that, yes, Warrior gets their job done so much quicker than the Shaman, but does Race care about what's happening right now? He's still at 30. He still has more minions to play to make Silvername's life awkward, and he still has another healing rain to buy him more turns. And all he has to do is find a couple of key cards out of the 8 remaining in his deck.
It's definitely a worry when, I would say, Russia completed their quest medium to fast speed. You know, it wasn't slow in any way.
Yeah.
And
it was. I would call that really quick. They would. I mean, with double Stonehill and the Phantom Militia early on, I think it was a very fast quest completion.
And yeah, they're not dead yet, right? You know, it's kind of scary overall. And don't get me wrong, like Race has, and Brazil have every right to already have played Grumble by now. They have 8 cards left in the whole deck.
They still need Grumble, and they still need Life Drinker if they want to get anything even approaching an inevitable win condition out of their Shudderwock.
Yeah, the Brawl is a nice safety net just in case they missed the life drinker, because Russia will know they only have one as well. Excuse me, but the deck lists are open. There's a warpath, but a bit late to the party.
Right.
It's still probably... Is it ever worth it?
You're asking if it's worth it to warpath for 8 damage here?
Yeah. What are you warpathing right now?
I mean, you have the weapon that you can just hit the 0-2 with anyway. I feel like the warpath is more valuable against like a Saranite chain gang turn or something.
Sure. I was just going to say he does know that the Saranite's there, right? Because that's the Zolad one.
Right.
Oh, okay. Life drinker. Tick that box.
So now, in theory, any turn race really feels like he has to go with Shudderwalk. He can. There is a chance from now on that he is able to play a Shudderwalk every turn.
I wonder.
Yes.
You seemed very deep in thought about that statement.
Because there's also a chance, but it's an extremely small chance, that Life Drinker doesn't die, and then Zola effect can hit the Life Drinker.
Oh, sure. I mean, like, if you're playing your Shudderwalk on an empty board.
Yes.
Then
Yeah. I'm just trying to work out, because he could even Lightning Bolt his own minion if it sticks, right?
Sure.
But again, the uncontrollable nature of the Ragnaros hero power means that it's also quite likely it does just get hit for 8 damage and die anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, particularly, because Russia's whole game plan here is kill
Press hero power, right?
clear your whole board and hit you in the face with 8 every turn.
Yeah. It's just when you're doing these desperation Shudderwalks, you do have to think, I need to give myself as much percentage as possible for this to happen.
Yeah. The problem with the Zola plan as opposed to the Grumble plan, though, is that there's only one Life Drinker in the deck, so therefore there's only one Life Drinker being played, so Shudderwalk only heals for 3 a turn, because you're only getting 9 mana Shudderwalks back every single time.
Yeah.
Healing for 3 a turn does not deal with getting hit for 8 every turn.
Those numbers just don't really work out, do they? Funnily enough, the lack of Hagatha as well is something to note, that you don't just play Hagatha when you want a 50-50 best every turn at this point. Hagatha gains you the armor, but loses you the ability.
Oh, this is so many totems that are getting hit here.
Is that like, what, 24 damage now on the totems?
Something approaching that.
Guess what? 0 to face.
Farsight is about as good as it gets of the remaining deck that isn't Grumble. Earthshock is just a huge whiff. Grumble, come out to
Where
play.
art thou?
Race needs you right now. The country of Brazil needs you right now. All the Silvername fans in chat, though, would like you to stay nicely buried in those bottom 4 cards, though.
In the bottom 100 slots in the card holder.
Yes.
This is... Totem!
Oh!
Ugh. Okay, I am...
Nothing like, Raven, a good rag 50-50.
I am a completely non-biased caster, correct? Kind of.
Sure?
And I'm feeling bad for Russia, right? I kind of wish one of those shots would go face, because this is heartbreaking. That we've all been there, but 4 in a row, I think that was, has hit totems.
There's the Grumble, and now Race executes the plan. Here's why he's been holding the Chain Gang so long. He Chain Gang's down, he Grumbles, he picks them back to hand, and now he can put another Chain Gang down before his 9-mana Shudderwalk turn if he wants to do that. Gives himself so many options. He can even play both of them alongside a board clear turn on the following turn if he wants to. It just gives him maximum flexibility and what kind of odds he wants to take with his eventual Shudderwalk.
And guess what? Brazil are nowhere near dying.
Yeah.
They can now take all the time in the world because they have guaranteed, well, not guaranteed, but a large effect of it actually pulling off here, whereas Silvername is just not pressuring any real damage, and you just cannot hit face with the hero power. Oof.
So now, decision time. I think you are at 75% right now for the Grumble to go off after a Chain Gang. You can take that up to 80% by playing another Saranite before the Shudderwalk. You can play both of them this turn and just play other minions. Use a kind of Pyromancer clear turn here even if you want to.
I'm just slamming Shudderwalk on 9 and just saying, let's go.
Like to play with fire.
Brazil disagree.
To be fair, he doesn't have the Hagatha, right? So... have the potential double AoE to clear. built into the Shudderwock.
I think it's just, I think he just Race understands here that the game is won, right? If Shudderwock works, the game is won. So why not play both chain gangs before you Shudderwock, just to give yourself maximum chance of that?
Again, you come at me with your logic, Sol, and unfortunately I struggle to argue.
So now this is the Warpath turn that Russian Federation have been waiting for such a long time at this point. They've kept resources like Brawl and like the Warpath in hand for so long because they knew they'd had to deal with this kind of stuff. Right now this Dry Whisker Armorer comes down, picks up a little bit of extra armor, not that that's going to end up being super relevant. And there goes the 8 that pushes Race down to 18. The Shudderwock will heal him back up to 21, which is still nice and safe outside the burst damage potential from Russia.
Hold on to your seats. Here we go.
We are looking
and
for a
look at Race.
Chain Gang.
Oh,
there it is.
Yep.
Chain Gang lands just the one, but the 1 mana Shudderwock will do just fine because that means he can now play it in the same turn. And all of these Shudderwocks, which are now being generated, are going to come back into his hand for the next turn. And that is just the G'st of G's. Race is going to get his moment in the sun after missing out at the HCT Summer Championships by bringing a lineup that just was not the right read on the tournament, or at least for his group. But this time, they've got everything spot on, and Brazil are going to pick up a very hard-fought victory in an absolute marathon of a series over Russia.
It really was, and the focus required to just stay on top there. And I guess it may have helped because Shudderwock, you know what you have to do, right? Especially in that matchup. It's pretty straightforward, but you still have to play well, of course. But it was pretty insane that Grumble was so deep in the deck, but once those Saranites went down, that was just too much to handle.
Yeah, my heart does go out to Russia and to the swarms of Russian fans that I assume are in chat.
I thought you were going to say the swarms of totems that were annihilated by Russia.
That is my point, yeah. What, 24 to 32 damage ended up hitting 0-2 totems in the end from those Die Insect hero powers. So, yeah, in a different world, Race would have been under much more pressure there, and even if he did get through to the Grumble, maybe didn't have the time to have that double chain gang turn at the end there and really maximize his odds.
Turn.
Who knows? But you know what I do know is that Russia were very unlucky with their 50-50s.
Yeah, let's take a look at the overall matchup. As you said, it was a long one for these guys, and you know you may have forgotten that Race played game number 1 of this match in which he lost with the Priest against the Warlock. But then, as you can see, it just played out, and Brazil had to win the bottom 2, taking down Starodachi and Silvername, who were the pilots for the Russian Federation in the last 2 games.
Yep. And a marathon of a series it was. Every game really did grind to a conclusion. Both players on both sides, and pretty much every game playing quite slowly as well, which, as I pointed out, is surprising when you have a player like Starodachi piloting that deck with the Paladin. But the team format just naturally lends itself to very considered play because everyone has a voice, everyone wants to be heard, and a lot of times, you know, you're even as you're learning to communicate as a team in the early weeks, going to step over each other a lot and just really like getting each other's way in terms of you know, getting across what needs to be said, which is very similar to our first few experiences casting together, Raven.
Honestly, I was thinking the exact thing. Like when you try casting for the first time, that's exactly what happens. We're not used to talking with the person when it's a kind of turn-taking scenario. But yeah, you can see some of the highlights from these series. So a couple of nice mind control techs going out there, but the power of the Warlock was a little bit too much.
In this case, the Hagatha comes down, picks up a huge board clear, and Russia were in the end able to get off that big Shudderwock turn and start the infinite loop that we were not going to see for the last time this series. And who could possibly be sick of watching Shudderwock animations at this point, Raven? Absolutely no one.
Yeah, especially when they were nerfed, so to speak, as well. We should double them again. Go. It should just be one huge animation, in my opinion. Just poof, that's what happened to deal with the outcome. Then we see, you know, a brave matchup and almost there by Starodachi and Russian Federation, but it was so stacked. The odds were just stacked against them, and Perna took the win with the Warrior. The second Scourge Lord Garrosh hit the board. That infinite hero power, as you mentioned, just continually wiping away almost every threat that was even left in the deck.
Yep. And that was a really terrible draw, as we pointed out, from the Warrior, and it was just that Garrosh that they picked up. The Death Knight, it was all they needed in the end. We saw the last few cards of the deck coming out, and it was the Blood Razors, it was the Brawls, it was the Warpaths, it was all the cards you would have thought they needed. But now here you see, boom, Totem, take 8, boom, Totem, take 8,
Yes!
boom, Totem, take 8. This was the story of Russia's torture during that game, and yes, it bought Race so much extra time. Firstly, to find that Grumble, which was buried deep in the bottom 3 or 4 cards of his deck. But then on top of that, he had an entire turn where he could just lackadaisically play out 2 more Saronite Chain Gangs to really secure his percentage odds for this exact reason.
To be honest, it was as if the hero power was just armor up, which doesn't matter against Shudderwock, right? Like, it literally just did nothing. I do believe we have an interview ready as well, so we can check in with a member of the winning team. Hello, Perna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
awesome.
hear you.
So, first off, congratulations on a very long and hard-fought win versus Russian Federation. How are you feeling right now after all the work you put into set the lineup with the team?
Yeah, thank you. We are amazing by that. We are pretty happy when the Pigs and Ban were done. We have all good matchups, we think. So it's amazing. Starting with a win.
Okay, and how much preparation have you and the rest of the team been putting into the first week especially? It's a slightly different format than last year. So how did you prep and did you like it?
Yeah, well, we are trying to understand how the format works. So we were prepping using a lot of Excel sheets and stuff like that. We did a preparation starting like Thursday.
Okay.
Until the deck submission, we were confident with the lineup we bring, and we did some play tests with the Pigs and Buns, so I think it works well like we planned.
Okay, nice. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I can see a cat in the background. What is the name of the cat? I just need to know. I'm not going to lie.
That was literally going to be my question.
I've been looking at you, cat, more than you. I'm not going to lie, Perna, I apologize, but... Oh.
I have another one here.
This is my favorite interview of all time. Yes, just throw cats at me. This is amazing. I'm so happy.
Do you have any question? Go on.
The cat in the sofa is a female. Her name is Sombra. Shadow.
Sombra. Okay.
In English.
Nice.
We'll ask just one more serious question before you let you go, though. How were you guys feeling when you in that last match? Like, Grumble was so buried so far, and what exactly did you do to your totems to make them so tanky and just keep taking hero powers?
It's not me. It's all about Raze. He keeps calling the shots, and the shots are going always on the totem. So we will have to ask Raze about that, but. It's his magic, I think.
We'll ask him next time. But again, just one last quick one. Congratulations on the win. Great to kick off Swiss for Team Brazil. We know it means a lot to you representing the country in the global games. So good luck with the rest of your games, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
We've seen Magnetic being introduced as a mechanic coming soon in Boomsday, but those totems were beyond magnetic. Yeah. That was the universe being sucked into a collapsing black hole level of gravitational pull. Every single one of those rag shots just went straight towards a totem there at the end. But still an incredible series outside of that. And an incredible interview nonetheless, because we just got to look at adorable furry creatures the whole time. Didn't hear a word he said.
What more do you want from an interview? But again, congratulations to Brazil taking the win. That was match number 3 of today for the Global Games. We have 2 more matches for you. So next up, Lorinda and Falcone are going to be bringing you 1 more, and then it'll be back on us to finish the show. So for now, we'll go to a quick break, or we say the next match. Don't go anywhere, guys.